Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sorry, I am a moment or two or three, I guess, late. I had a slight technical glitch, which of course occurred right when I was about to start the stream. But it's nothing that a hard reset of Windows couldn't fix, or at least so I hope. So hopefully there will be no more nasty gremlins or surprises in the works. For today, I thought I would just do some, just kind of an open chat. I think I posted this on, or at least I posted it on my YouTube channel community tab. I made a post. Thought I would work on some game stuff, throw some ideas out there. I, as usual, love to talk to everybody. I didn't have anything particular planned. I'm a little bit behind in my just mentally working my way through my schedule. Usually I try to think about it a couple days in advance, but I sort of had a lot going on and I couldn't get anything else quite wrapped in my brain enough. Oh, Tank Pal. Hello. Hello, Tank Pal. So I thought, well, let me do this. Let me work on my game, which I'm going to throw right here. I like mind mapping. So I'm using a mind map just to throw some ideas out there. Oh, hey, Daniel. Hello, also. Throw some ideas out there and kind of see what sticks. I did go see The Green Knight yesterday, which was the first time been to a movie theater, definitely since the beginning of COVID, and probably a good bit before COVID. I've always liked going to the movies, but I've gotten to the point in which it has to be a really good movie or a movie that really is driving me to go see it on the big screen. I have found that I'm well willing to wait for things to come to home video of some kind. Home video seems like an outdated term. Think of VHS tapes and the like, but whether it's something I can then buy on Blu-ray, I still like to have physical discs for a lot of the movies I like, because you don't always know when you're going to have internet or when you might lose internet. And it's always nice if a service is out or you decide to stop subscribing to a service that, hey, you can throw on this disc and play. Hey, Tank Pal says he thinks this is great. I did not know you mind mapped. I do. How was the movie? So I will. So yeah, let me get in the movie, I guess, because it really has inspired something that I want to add to my game tonight. It was really good. I'm not going to do any. I'm going to try to stay basically spoiler free, though. It is following basically Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and the hero is Sir Gawain, and the Green Knight is the character in there. It's very visual. I think it definitely is a film that I'm not certain you have to see it on the big screen, but it rewards seeing it on a large screen and just letting the beautiful visuals and cinematography kind of wash over you. It's very artistic. It has a very dreamlike quality to it, but not so much that it feels like it doesn't make sense. It's not dreamlike in the sense where they're making leaps that maybe leaps of continuity, or sometimes when you get kind of dreams in which they'll sort of jump around and things don't totally make sense, or they don't have an internal logic because, hey, it's a dream, so pew, 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 pew. No, it's not like that, but it definitely has a quality of unreality to it, which I think befits the fact that we're talking about, a legendary kind of story. So I really enjoyed it. I don't even remember if did they have any trailers? I think must have. I don't remember anything really piquing my interest as far as the trailers. Dev Patel, I think that's his name, who plays Gawain, is excellent. I don't even know the name of a lot of the other actors. There's a couple of them I know. They all do a good job. I don't have any complaints. Not a ton of special effects. It doesn't rely on special effects. It's not dreamlike in, say, the way the Cell or one of those movies is. But where it does have special effects, they're very well done. It's just a really good movie, and I think it'll have a lot of inspiration for folks. Some of it, I feel like folks could go the other way with it. I think as often happens where people say, "Hey, I want to replicate this narrative moment," and that's great. But in a narrative film, you don't have to deal with player characters doing choices or not making choices or making the wrong choice. Something like this kind of relies upon the characters sort of making these deliberate choices and an enforcement of their characters, which makes total sense, but you can't count on that with your player characters. So on the one hand, I think it's going to give people a lot of interesting ideas, maybe refresh a little bit the Arthurian feel, because it has it, but not necessarily in the same way that a movie like Excalibur has it. It's a little bit different, definitely more ground level. If you want to compare to, say, if you think of Excalibur having a lot of that view, sort of a really glamorized view of sort of the king's level kind of down, right? What was it like from the round table kind of view? I feel like this is more as if you took a film and did it more from Percival's point of view. If you remember Percival in the movies, right? He aspires to be a knight. So, and you get some little bits in Excalibur about him kind of doing stuff, but the movie's not really about his point of view. It's really about the kind of glitz and glamour. This is more about the travails of somebody who's, not that they're not have status like Percival did, but sort of someone who's not part of that, but maybe aspires to be. Let's see. He's seen one trailer. Yep. Let's see. Here we go. It seems a very gritty, grimdark version of Arthurian letter. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's grimdark. I don't think it's trying to be. I don't know. I feel like when I hear grimdark, I think of something that's trying to be just super dark, and I don't feel like this is. It is dark and it is gritty, but it does have some humor in it. It seems to be intentional. I feel like when the humor comes up, or when the humor came up and people kind of laughed, it seemed to me there were moments that were planned for humor. It wasn't something that the humor, sometimes in a movie, maybe where a moment's not working, it can seem unintentionally funny, which can be kind of a killer. I think the humor was stuff that they had planned in there that, you know, is meaningful. I definitely wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't really call it, I don't feel like it's grimdark, but maybe when more folks see it, I'll be able to get some feedback what other people see, but it didn't seem grimdark to me. I'm trying to think of what a grimdark would be. A really good example of a grimdark kind of fantasy movie. I'm not sure. It seems more weird fantasy to me. Yeah, it definitely has a weird fantasy vibe, though. It's mostly people. There's not a ton of supernatural stuff. Obviously, the Green Knight, and I think if you've seen the trailers, there's a fox in it. That's definitely not quite normal, but it's not like a chock full. It's not a sort of a journey through the land of fairy or something where every other thing is kind of crazy. It's pretty well grounded, like that. It's grounded to sort of a version of reality, right? A sort of somewhat fantastic version of reality. It does definitely have fantastic elements in it, but I wouldn't say that it's, you don't see like, oh, here's the entire Fiend Folio or Monster Manual sort of thrust onto the screen. They got it pretty well dialed down, but still, it's definitely fantastic. So I definitely recommend it. I have a couple of really good theaters that are sort of in my general sphere. One that's kind of right up the street from me, not right up the street. It's about a half mile away. It's about a 15-minute walk. It's a really nice theater. It has assigned seating. You can eat food in the theater. It's just very well done. I went to a late show, so I think you take this kind of movie, which I don't perceive as being a mass market film. I think it's going to appeal to, obviously, I think a lot of folks who play RPGs it's going to appeal to, but I think in general, it's the audience there are really people who want to engage with it. It's not just, oh, we got to see Fast 9, kind of because it's the big summer movie, right? But I think people going to see it kind of really want to see it and enjoy it. I also went to a very late show, or late for me. It was a 9:15 show. So between those two things, it was really an excellent experience at the theater, which I'm glad for, because I'd heard from some friends, people that they know who've had horrible theater experiences since trying to go, since theaters have opened, trying to go. This was really good, but I feel like the theater, it's kind of a neighborhood theater. It's a little bit it's not a total art house, but it's kind of has a little bit of art house vibe. The assigned seating, I know a lot of places do assigned seating now, but they have it. They're kind of smaller theaters anyway, and everything. And the lateness, like I really went to a show that I think put it firmly in kind of adults who really want to see it time slot, as opposed to others, really put together. So it was really a nice experience to go. I was a little bit nervous. I had my mask with me. After I ate my food, I kind of put my mask back on. But I really enjoyed it. It was really nice to get out. Let's see if anyone else has anything in the chat. Okay, nope, that seems about it. So I've I'm going to sort of reset things. If you haven't seen some of my recap videos, I haven't done many recap. I've only done maybe 1 or 2 recap videos in forever. I'm sort of guiding my group towards the Caves of Chaos from Keep on the Borderlands. There's no keep in this version. The caves are kind of in this band of hills, but the party has been, I don't know, they kind of took on a task to go there, and potentially they don't know it's the Caves of Chaos yet. They don't even know it's caves really yet, but they were sort of petitioned to find out what happened to the leader of this band of werewolves that they interacted with quite a ways ago. So they took on the task. And this mind map kind of represents sort of the elements of the Cave of Chaos is at kind of the center of this. And maybe I should bump up the screen size here. Maybe I can also, let's see, this is better. Okay, I can do that. And maybe I can, I'm using this Miro. So this is in a browser. I had some mind mapping software on my Mac, but I don't have it here yet. So I don't know exactly how to zoom in. That's kind of up and down. Okay. So the way I'm using this mind map for the moment, and this is the first time I've used, I just kind of set this up. Tank Pal says, Caves of Chaos from the Keep. And Daniel Stroud asks, what system are you using? So the system is a fairly heavily modified basic expert. The modifications are all on the player side. When I started this campaign, someone asked me, hey, you DM, I have a couple of fellow parents, fellow dads in this neighborhood dad group who have expressed interest to join in game. So I wanted to get one, and I was hoping that maybe you could run it. And I said, great. And I said kind of what experience they have, kind of what system are they hoping, are they using, that kind of thing. And it turned out that the one guy who talked to me, he's played D&D a little bit before. And I think maybe one other person is a little bit familiar with it before, but it basically came down to system wasn't super important to them. They weren't saying, oh, I need to be 5th edition, but that's kind of what they'd heard of, as most folks have. So my response was, well, I could run 5th edition. I have the books to run 5th edition, but I don't really want to run 5th edition because I feel like I can take it at OSR system. I could just run it faster for me. Just my process is faster. I feel like I could just do everything faster. And it's a system that I just enjoy it a little bit more. Well, maybe not a little bit more than a little bit, but I enjoy it more. So they were fine with it. But when it came down to them describing what kind of characters they wanted characters that were more in the super heroic realm. I think one of them wanted to play kind of a Witcher. One of them wanted to play kind of a Jedi Knight. The original guy who asked me, he just wanted to play sort of a dwarf, and the other guy who ended up dropping out, who was one of the first 2 players, but he dropped, and then 2 other guys joined, was basically playing a cleric. So I wanted to play around with some mechanics, this kind of a dice pool mechanic. So I sort of hacked together this system and gave them characters who, compared to a vanilla basic expert, say, class, are fairly overpowered. There's only 3 of them playing now, though they do have some hirelings, so they are certainly capable of buffing up their party. I feel like the die system, the die pool system I have, does some pretty good job of limiting the amount of times they can do stuff. So, for example, in the cleric, who's no longer playing, but the cleric class that I created for him, say, could turn undead, but they didn't have unlimited uses of turn undead anymore. They had to use this pool of dice, which could be lost. So you might start with 4 dice when you wake up in the morning, but over the day, as you're using your extraordinary abilities, you're using up those dice. So the less dice you have, obviously, that you have to be careful with your power. Same thing with spells. I don't have spell points or spell slots, but to cast spells, you need to roll those dice and risk those dice to loss. So I felt like it, and again, it's very small sample size, and they're still only 2nd level, so I have no idea how the advancement's going to kick in and how that's going to work, but I feel like it's done a pretty good balance. They haven't been able to go overboard just doing things willy-nilly. And so in some cases, you might look at a cleric, say a vanilla BX cleric, and yeah, they can cast turn undead all day, every day, but they don't have a spell. So this cleric I had some spells, and they could turn undead, but they had to weigh the spells against the turning because they use the same dice. So if they turn undead, that drops down their spell casting potential. If they cast a bunch of spells, they lose some of their dice that way, that curtails their turning potential. So I felt like it balanced it. But I think it's been good for them because they've been able to kind of get into sort of playing these more heroic characters. And from my standpoint, I haven't really changed anything on the monster side. I'm basically running the monsters as is. So, and I haven't really changed there to hit numbers or anything like that. So really from the player side, it's sort of a little bit souped up. But from my side, I haven't changed anything. And I felt like I've been able to run things. And I really haven't felt too much that they're sort of blowing through stuff. And again, it helps that they're low level. And we'll see what happens when they get higher level. But that in somewhat broad strokes is the system. Let's see, we got here from Tank Pow. Do you have any sort of homebrew rules document they can share with us? At some point, I will put something together. I want to make some edits and changes and kind of make it nice. I have a Patreon, and I don't do enough to thank and help my Patreon supporters. I think I did put a draft document up on the Patreon, so maybe I'll put it on Patreon and put a simpler version. Maybe I'll swap out the draft document and make that one publicly available and put the nicer one on the Patreon, because I do want to support them for helping me out. And thanks to those who have that have helped me out on Patreon and coffee. Oh, Danny, you were in BX. Yeah, I like BX a lot. And then let's see, Tank Pass says, I really enjoy running for 3 players. Maybe my favorite player count. Yeah, I like smaller parties. You don't run into a lot of the issues that you do when you get up to 5 and 6. The spotlighting and things like that. I think with 3, it's good because everyone is kind of going to have their moments, even if it's just amongst themselves. I don't feel like I have to say, okay, your turn, player 1. Okay, now your turn, player 2. They kind of naturally will get into it. And it's enough that you don't get just, or there's enough opinions to get a variety of things going on as far as the players. I think sometimes maybe with 2 players, it's either going to just be just a split and they're just going to be opposed to each other and you're going to get stuck. Or with 4 or 5 players, you can get into this decision-making can become sort of a long process. But with 3, you have enough where you have somebody who's basically going to break ties. So it's kind of nice that way. Tank Pal says, I am working on a rules document myself. Great. Well, I would love to see it. And I'd love to hear more about it as well. A Patreon edition would be cool. Yeah, I got to do that. Oh, Bandscape. Hey, Daniel. 3 or 4 is a sweet spot. I run for 6. Yeah, sometimes you just have to. Oh, maybe I misheard that. I guess maybe Daniel from Bandscape isn't in here, but hi anyway. Wrong Daniel. I saw Daniel and I jumped to conclusions. It's the other Daniel. Not the other. You're both awesome Daniels. Group dynamic communication flows real well 3 or 4. Yes, indeed, it does. And much easier if everyone has retainers too. Yeah, these guys, they kind of have hired hirelings as a group. One of their hirelings was a 1st level fighter, but he actually died to that fog that this poison mist over here that came up in the session before last. They were the lone victim of that. So now they're down to I think they have a couple of. They've got a spearman and I think a crossbowman left. They still have their torchbearer, who's been their torchbearer for a while. He was a veteran of one of their earlier forays. So he came back for another round. And they had someone managing their horses, kind of a driver. But they really couldn't take it was for their wagon. They couldn't take their wagon in here from Norway. No, Daniel, I know, actually. I just jumped at the Daniel part because I know his last name is not Strand. It's just me. I think I saw 2 things put together. I saw the B and I jumped. But thank you for watching from Norway. Welcome. And then Tank Pow, is this a homebrew world? Yes, it is completely homebrew. I have a hard time running non-homebrew worlds. I don't know why. I'm not trying to say that as somewhat kind of, I'm trying to be, I'm trying to give myself credit in somewhat self-deprecating way. No, because I feel like making homebrew worlds it's hard. It's a lot of work. You have to constantly educate your players onto what's going on. Whereas if you played in a world that was established, you could just run with it. Assuming everyone knows the same kind of world, right? Assuming everyone knows Forgotten Realms, you jump into Forgotten Realms, everyone's going to have this really shared understanding of everything right away. You don't need to bring them up to speed on everything. But I don't know. They've never appealed enough to me. Maybe I've never found one. Probably the two that I would come closest to running is like the kind of Conan universe world. I don't know what's the name for it. I always call it Hyperborea, but it's not. Hyperborea is just one. I don't know. The Conan's kind of world I think is just cool with lots of different areas and cultures and things in there. And Lord of the Rings would maybe be the other one that if I was going to jump into, I would do something in Middle Earth. I think would be cool. And you know, between those two, I think you'd find, I don't know if that many people, I mean, I would have to probably read up again on the Conan stuff. I feel like for Middle Earth, maybe you get a lot of folks who have sort of shared knowledge. I mean, that can work against you too, because sometimes you can get in arguments over, no, you know, if you've ever gotten arguments like superheroes where you say, oh, Spider-Man would have done this. And you go, no, Spider-Man would never have done that, right? That can happen with shared the worlds because everyone has their own, almost the same version, but slightly different. And those differences can kind of bite you in the butt. And can cause kind of issues, but for the most part, can be good. Hey, Frederick's in the house. I always thought the Green Knight story would make a good module. Yeah, it would. I mean, in the movie, it comes down to particular choices, and those choices build, and I'm trying not to spoil anything, right? But those choices build on kind of these narrative choices are building up over the course of the movie that culminate at the end. And these things, or I guess at the beginning, at the end, right? So you have this, again, you have this hero's journey, this arc of this character. It's hard to replicate that kind of arc with the party. You could take them through all the steps. You can take them through the physical journey. Okay, you're going to go from Camelot and you're going to ride to the Green Chapel, right? But without that character stuff along the way, it might not be terribly meaningful. And at least in terms of this movie, I'd have to go back and it's been a long time since I've looked at the actual story or the one whatever versions of the story. So yes, it's good. I think it would work great in something that really is going to some way you could emphasize those character choices people make. And I've thought about how to mechanize that stuff because I really like the idea of having things like bonds and you know, curses and sort of oaths as these things that really bind you in a meaningful way. You don't just say like I swear it and then walk away and do the opposites. Like if you swear to do something, you swear fealty. That means something. And I think that would really, it's a good story that would play in that kind of world. If you can really get a world where those kind of words and bonds and actions have a really strong consequences. Might not work that well if everyone's just kind of going, doing their own thing. Cause without that, it's just like, just go to a place basically. Tank Pal says they homebrew, but still heavily from published work. Yeah. I mean, I borrow from everywhere. What is it? There's no original ideas, right? It's all variations of stuff that's come before. Oh, Terrence is in the house. Hey, Terrence. I like worlds that serve the needs of my campaign model. Yeah, absolutely. I tend not to even, I'm probably not even that thoughtful about it. I kind of just think of a place like, man, this would be a cool place to play. Like, I would just think like, yeah, it's a cool place to play. Ooh, this has a cool idea I like. And I go from there. I should probably do a better job of looking at what my campaign's going to be. I think in this case, the sort of notes, if you will, I had from my pre-session 0, or it might have even been pre-session 0, was they liked kind of Arthurian stuff and they liked sort of deep politics and intrigue. So it was kind of the two notes I had was basically Arthurian and Dune. Dune in terms of all the intrigues, all the factions that are kind of at war with each other. And I think a little bit of that. I don't know if it was a darkness necessarily, but kind of that political gameplay. So those were the two notes that sort of shaped this world. Tank Pal says, I love world building and homebrewing campaigns so much. It's one of the things I really love. Yeah, I think it's great to love it, right? I think you need to love it. And I think you just, the thing you be careful whenever you're world building is make sure that you're not pushing your players through a bunch of stuff because you love to tell them about it. Making sure the stuff you're servicing is meaningful to them. And I'm kind of on a big Lord of the Rings kick because I'm listening to those podcast series on exploring Lord of the Rings. You really see a lot of that, right? Where they'll break down a passage, and I haven't gotten nearly this far yet. But for example, if you take Gandalf's speech in the Mines of Moria, which I probably will do a whole video on because I think it's a really great kind of world building example. But when Gandalf plops the staff down on the bridge and gives the Balrog this line of dialogue, I'm a keeper of the secret flame of Arnor, all this stuff, right? Calls him a flame of Udun. And these things go on, right? And you shall not pass, right? It's a great moment. There's a bunch of stuff in there from the first age. This is all first age material that no explanation. Tolkien doesn't stop and say, oh, well, when he meant Udun, he was referring to, Angband. That was also called Udun, and that was where Morgoth lived, until he was deposed at the end of the Second Age. And, the Flame of Arnor refers to this, right? There's no explanation of it. And so even not knowing anything, I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. But the explanation's not anywhere in it. It's just given in the moment. This is just stuff that Gandalf says because it's powerful and it refers to what's happening. And I think that kind of world building, I'm sure if in a game, if your NPC were to throw something like that down, I'm sure the players would be going, oh, tell me about Udun. What do you mean Flame of Udun? What is that? Right. And then they can say more. But I think the problem can be is when you when you end up getting your party basically on a sightseeing expedition around your world and just trying to show them all the stuff because you wrote it all up, but it doesn't really pertain to them. It's not important to their whatever they're doing, but you have, you feel this need to tell them. So I love world building, but you got to kind of keep the urge in check to just throw your players a novel of your world. Tank Pal says, I used to run a lot of Middle Earth back in the day. The shared knowledge thing is one of the reasons I love Homebrew so much. Yeah, the shared knowledge is a double-edged sword. Oh, Frederick Orks says, watch the latest Drake Paragon vid on YouTube. Faroe Island native talks about curses and history. I'll have to check that out. We've also got from None Nothing. Hey, None Nothing, welcome. If you prep material that you think will take your party far as to get through, how long does it actually take them? Man, I have no idea. That's a good question. I don't think it is knowable in a global sense, in a general sense. What I think is that you will start to understand your party as you play, and you'll see the kind of stuff that's clearly going to, they're going to become absorbed with, and you might see stuff that you go, well, this is great, but they're not going to bother. They're not going to bother with it because there's stuff that I'm trying to think of the example. Well, actually, they're good one. The this poison mist thing here, I don't have it in here. I should probably put it in there, but there was I don't know. I think you were here for that stream where I talked about it. I had this. It was all randomly generated in this wood. There was a shrine, and the shrine was ruined. I just meant it to be a little. I just wanted something to break up the woods. I think, as I've talked about another thing, in a lot of videos on hex crawling, right? You're basically crawling through this woods hex. You're looking for a feature, something to make it stand out from just all the rest of the woods and give it a little bit of feel. So I used that D30 sandbox companion, and I got I think originally I got Geyser. Geyser was what I got. So I didn't I started rolling Geyser around in my brain. I said, okay, Geyser, let's go with a fountain. So I decided to put a shrine around the fountain, and then I decided to make it ruined. And then I decided, well, what are some interesting things about it? I'd already talked about for them how the wood was kind of withered and not healthy. So I thought maybe there's something kind of acidic. I just kind of put it all together. They got super invested in trying to really decode the shrine in a way that I wasn't expecting. I thought it would be like, oh, this is interesting, and maybe we should leave this alone. Or I thought maybe they would they would do something obnoxious, and the elemental might come out, and that might be an encounter. I didn't expect them to go full archaeologists and want to sift through the ground and look for traces and really get into it, but they did. So. But I think maybe if I'd thought about it more, I might have anticipated it. I think I did have enough information to say this might be something that they are interested, because they seem to be very much into building up their knowledge about this world, which is great. I mean, I love it. And I'm not, I'm certainly not annoyed or mad at them that they wanted to spend time figuring this thing out, and doing that let me build it out more, right? Because it was all randomly generated. So the fact that they wanted to sit and plan and do that, and gave me then time, because it was at the end of one session, the beginning of another session, to have that gap to flesh out even more, think about what kind of interesting relationships there might be through all these different things. So came up with that whole poisonous mist angle, and I could just, right. So, you know, that was something that I could have looked at and said, yeah, they're definitely going to be involved with that. Other things they might not be involved with, but I think it's hard to just look at someone and say, this is 4 hours and they'll get through it in 2 hours. It's all about, well, what does my party like to do? And then I could focus on prepping that stuff. And then I'm not going to worry about these other things because I know they don't care about it. Frederick Ork says, always hard to gauge time. I always try to have a side quest or two ready if the pace is going too fast. Yeah, I mean, mine's a home game, so I don't even really mind the pace too much. I'm okay with getting more stuff in front of them, especially in this case. I know the Caves of Chaos are kind of at the other end of this journey, assuming they don't get too lost or turn around and end up coming out the other side, but they're in kind of a bowl instead of a valley of hills, so they can't get too far out of the way. They might end up a little bit too far north or a little bit too far south or whatever, but they're going to be able to find the place in broad strokes because they're in this bowl. So I'm not really on that thing because there's always something else going on. I just want to make sure that I'm giving them time to do the stuff they want to do and not, but not either not making them hurry too fast, or I'm not, either I'm not giving them enough time, or I'm not. I want to make sure I'm aware of when they're kind of done, but they haven't told me they're done. Because sometimes you're like, yeah, I'm done. But as a player, you might be waiting for the GM to move on, and the GM's not, because the GM's waiting for you to say, oh, we're done. So I try to be kind of mindful of what's going on with them. What is the podcast? I've read a lot of Tolkien history and criticism. Okay, let me get you the podcast. I'm happy to shout it out because I have been enjoying the heck out of it. So keep in mind, this is what got me into playing Lotro, if you've seen my late night Lotro thing. So it's by, hold on a minute. Let me get down. It is Mythgard. So the podcast itself is called Mythgard's Exploring the Lord of the Rings. And they do this thing. So I'm listening to it on, I'm listening to it on Overcast on my phone. It's, excuse me. It's Mythgard's Exploring the Lord of the Rings. And what it is I guess he runs it on video, and they're still going. They're not even through the Lord of the Rings yet. And this started in like 2017. I think I'm on 2018 now. It's 2021, and you can still, I forget which night it is, because I'm also subscribed to them on YouTube, and I'll see they're running, still doing it. He runs it on video, and they actually do it inside of Lotro, inside of Lord of the Rings Online. And they'll do kind of half the show, or I guess you could maybe break it down to thirds. They go very slowly, which is fine with me, but it is kind of slow. And like maybe the first third of a podcast is usually addressing questions from the show before on the material and interpretations and questions, things like that. Then there's a third on the next, and he has them as slides. I'm listening to it, so I don't see the slides, but then on the whatever material they're going to cover in this episode, or try to, because they often doesn't get as far maybe as he would like, and it's even going slow. And then the last third is where they actually tour some area in Lord of the Rings Online that pertains to the reading material. Now I skip over the last third. I listened to the first third. It's interesting because I've been listening to all of them. So the questions that are coming up interesting to me. I skip the tours in Lord of the Rings Online. I don't think I've ever listened to that one. Just when he says, okay, now we're going to go walking or whatever, I go, okay, I'll just forward to the next episode. But they're really good, really in depth, and I like that they're going very slow. It allows them to be very thoughtful about particular pieces, and it's really giving me some cool inspiration. Terrence asks, "Is it Ringheads?" I haven't heard of Ringheads, but no, it's not Ringheads. It's from Mythgard Academy. Also, I think it's Signum University are the two entities. But this one's called Mythgard's Exploring Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's long. You're not going to get through a lot. No Fun Allowed says I can prep for 5 minutes and that prep will last 4 hours of play. I can prep for 4 hours and that prep will last 5 minutes of play. Yeah, that's kind of why I try to stick to. I don't want to prep for. Let me prep for 30 minutes or an hour, and then and just put it in kind of notational form, and I can kind of adapt. And that's why I like having the tables and things around, because even if I don't use specifically what I roll on the table, a lot of times what I roll on the table will be inspirational. But it has come up with good things. These werewolves that they're helping out, that was just a random encounter. But the random encounter, I gave it sort of a context. They kind of jumped on that. They ended up becoming somewhat friendly with these werewolves. It wasn't a combat encounter, or it didn't turn into a combat encounter. And also now these werewolves, which I really wasn't planning for. And I didn't, and it was for me, I wouldn't even, if I had had a chance at that point to put together my own random table of encounters, I would not have had werewolves on it. Werewolves were not something I had anticipated having in this world at all. But I rolled on the vanilla BX table. I got lycanthropes, and I went with werewolves. And they're not like, they're, I didn't frame them exactly as werewolves to the players. They're more kind of wolf folk, I think is what they have. And I don't even think they've seen them in wolf form. They've seen them in kind of humanoid form, but they've heard them howl and do kind of wolfish things in the background. Just a random encounter, but I just kind of fit it in. And I tried to take it and look at the kind of gap I had. If it's a square peg and the hole's round, let me shave the corners of that square peg to fit, popped it in there. And so they had some interesting things with the encounter that ended. I integrated them into the world. So then other kind of trouble was coming, and they knew it was coming from these wolf people. That the wolf people lost their original home. And the party said, oh yeah, the settled lands are kind of that way. You should go settle over there. Well, that put them into conflict with their town. So then when they came back from one of their things, there was this kind of these kind of little skirmishes were happening between these wolf folk who had taken up in some of these little foothills and the organized sort of town militia and, military. And, of course the players were like, oh my gosh, we did that. It was kind of fun too, because it was really that kind of consequence. Like to themselves, are like, oh my gosh, we told them to settle here. And they're like, well, we're not going to tell anybody. Don't tell anybody that we told them to come here. Right. And then that kind of happened, and that's been sort of in the background. And then they were doing something else, and they decided to kind of try to reach out to the Wolfmen again. And I said, okay, they come up and the party, and they were at this point where the party was kind of looking for something to do. And they were sort of calling for these Wolfmen, and my party is great because they're so earnest. They want to be like good guys. They want everyone to look at them and say, hey, aren't we like good guys? So they called the Wolfmen and said, and they called them over, and the Wolfmen finally show up. And the party's like, hey, we just want to let you know these things are happening. And hey, if we're over here and we call you, if we howl 2 times, it means it's safe. If we howl, 3 times, it means, stay away. Is there anything we can help you with? And so I was thinking about it, and I said, okay, well, maybe there is something they can help them with. And I said, all right, well, let's do this thing. So I decided that the leader of the Wolfmen had gone out to scout out a new home. They'd done some kind of scouting missions to try to find a new home that was further away from the settled people. So at least they weren't running into them too often. And the wolf people are more powerful man to man than the military of the town, but they don't have that many people. They have women and children, right? Because I was rolling up like a wandering, wilderness wandering monster kind of. So this was like their whole village was all kind of together. So they can't afford to get into just flat out war with the townsfolk right now. They're not in that kind of spot. So I said, okay, the leader went looking out and had been making forays, trying to find somewhere new they could settle. And this is where I got that he'd gone deeper into the hills, and they'd found the river, and they'd found a ford across the river in the hills. And on the other side, and they'd gone back and forth a couple times, and they went out one time and didn't come back. But because they're so short on sort of manpower, they need to protect the village and keep everything safe. They'd been under instructions not to go after them. So the wolf guy said to the party, he said, look, we can't go after him. I would love to, but I have, I'm under strict orders. I got to stay and guard and keep safe our wives, our moms, our children. So we can't go. But it would mean a great deal to us if you could figure out what happened and find, our leader. And if you're trying to get in with us, kind of what they're saying, like, look, you seem to be wanting to make our friends. If you really want to be friends and make a good impression, if you can find the guy and bring it back, that will certainly make a good impression. And the party bit on it, and they're like, okay, we're going to do it. And so that's what kind of led them onto this part of the adventure, which was going into the hills, finding the river. Well, the river was easy to find because it runs down by the town. They could just walk into it, find the river, going up the river. They found the ford recently. They crossed the ford, and then they found this horrible wood with the mist. And on the other side of the wood with the mist is where the caves, my caves of chaos. I'm not going to call them the caves of chaos, but my caves. That's where they are. Yep. Tang Pao just catching up on the chat, agrees. You can't predict the players. You cannot predict the players. And then Dave Mills, hey, Dave Mills, you never go full archaeologist. No, never go full archaeologist. It did lead to some, some fun stuff. And I won't repeat myself. It came up in the other that recap I did over the weekend. Tank Pal says, sounds like a very cool podcast. It is. You have to, the podcast, getting back to exploring Lord of the Rings, you just got to be mindful it's slow and they cover very little in a given episode. Of course, you're on, I'm not watching it live. So you can, when they hit certain parts I don't want, or they cover stuff at the beginning, like announcements, but the announcements are 3 years old, I can just forward through them and get to it. But the actual content is really good. He is very thoughtful. He knows a lot about the subject matter. He engages with the audience, and kind of like you guys, right? You guys are sort of the live audience who are engaging with me as I'm rambling about whatever. He has similar, but they ask good questions, and they say great stuff like you guys do. So even though I'm listening to it and I'm not interacting and can't even see the questions as he talks about them, they always bring out good nuances, and you really get to get into stuff like the language and really get into details. What do they mean by using this instead of that? What is this? Could they mean this instead of that? What are these relationships? And they're really, really getting into it. So I really, really, really enjoy it. It's something if I'm going for a walk or if I'm driving in the car by myself for a couple of hours, I can just put it in there and just listen and drive. And it's given me a lot of extra appreciation for a lot of things in there, and definitely giving me inspiration as well. Let's see. Anything else going on? All right. I've run to the end of stuff in the chat. So my party, so like I was saying, going back to I'm losing my train of thought. So my party right now, where they are, is I've just given I think a lot of the background. They've gotten to this wood. They followed the river. They found where the ford is. They're actually already on the side of the river they needed to be on, but they wanted to find that ford area so they could kind of line themselves up with where the wolf folk leader went, which was smart. They found it. And there was an old road that continued on. They followed the old road. The old road went into this wood, and there were two posts with these two skulls on it. And that was really interesting. So here's another interesting thing, right? Things I can't anticipate, things that were interesting. So I had that this road essentially leads straight to the Caves of Chaos. Okay, it's basically what it is. And I put these markers by the road to kind of indicate that the people who are living in these Caves of Chaos, that they're indicating like this is our land, kind of this is our domain, right? And I think that's how the party first thought. But when they got into the wood and they followed the road, and the road went right to that ruined shrine, and then there was that other shrine too. I'm just going to put in there. I don't know what to call it. I'll call it the Living Shrine, which is now destroyed because they destroyed it. They followed it. It got to that one shrine. They did their archaeology. The mist came up, drove them back out. They started to think. So once they had the whole thing where they got caught, the mist was coming up. They found that other shrine. They ran to it. They accidentally destroyed it. The mist was coming up. One of the hirelings died. One of the players almost died. They just barely got out. So when they started looking at the stuff after the fact, they actually reinterpreted those skulls on the poles as warnings that somebody, a force for good, is trying to warn them, not to go in warning people against don't go into the wood, which is not what they are for at all. And I didn't even think that they would go down that road of thinking that wasn't what it was. I thought it was obvious, right? Of course, right? Means, it's obvious. These kind of folks in the caves are not going to write a sign saying, welcome to Caves of Chaos or keep out. That's what those skulls are for. But they thought it was keep out as in, okay, these woods are bad, stay out of the woods, which they are. So then this last session, I wanted to see one. So they wanted to rest for a whole day because they desperately needed hit points. And I told them if they rest for a whole day, they can get an extra hit points. They usually only get one. Overnight camping, get one. But I said, if you spend basically the whole day resting and not doing anything other hard work, you can have another hit point back. So they were all in for, we're going to take a full day resting. So in the afternoon of that full day, I had a troop come up. They didn't have a fire out at this point because it was in the late afternoon. So I determined that this troop isn't really looking for anything. They're not, it's fairly open ground, but you're far enough away that if you're just kind of hanging out, like they were sort of sitting down, relaxing, it's not like they form up, they make a big silhouette or anything against the sky or anything, right? You're kind of, there's the forest edges there, you sort of blend in. They were kind of far enough away that unless they really did something obvious, they could kind of, weren't really going to be seen. But these guys were moving right sort of, or I guess it's just like across their vision. So they saw it. And had a wagon, but sort of a roofed wagon that they were pulling with some kind of creature that the players couldn't tell what it was, but I made clear from the silhouette it wasn't a horse, or it wasn't simply a horse. And they went up and they stopped, and then these tiny little red lights kind of went. And this is at this point, I guess it wasn't I guess it was more towards the evening. The fog is already rising up. They went into the wood, kind of mindless of the fog. There were just some discussions over whether they should go try to warn these people, don't go into the wood, or whether they thought these were the good people who were trying to warn them. They're not the good people. These are denizens of those caves who had gone off on their own sort of, I didn't even determine whether it was a raid or what they were doing, but they were coming back. I think it was kind of a raid is how I think. And so I was hoping that the party would be inquisitive enough to try to get closer and see what it was. And if they'd gotten closer, they would have seen that the leader of this troop had gone up, said some kind of magic word, and the skulls lit up, eyes and skulls lit up, and it parted the fog for them and allowed them to pass through, which actually was not what I intended to do in the beginning. It was not what I thought. I really just thought it was just a warning. But then I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, if these guys live on the other side of this fog, they're probably not going to always, because at first I thought, well, they live on the other side of the fog, but if they always move during the day, then they won't have to worry about it because it only comes up at night. But then I thought, well, they might need to work at night, and it starts rising in the late afternoon. I don't know. It just made sense that they would have some way through. So I thought, well, why don't I use these? And that way, there's this signpost. And then if the players can somehow figure out how to hear that magic word, get it, then they would have a way through the wood safely. But the party wanted their rest. They didn't want to mess with it, and so they didn't. So to them, they're still seeing it as a potential, a helpful sign. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out when they start encountering the actual creatures over there, what their attitude and what everything is. Tang Pal says, do I have an end game in mind for your campaign, or do I improv that also? I improv everything. What will happen is I do have... So I guess you could say there are three scales of things that are going on in the world. There's local things, there's sort of regional things, and then there's kind of world things. So right now there isn't too much that's around the players that's at regional level. It's pretty quiet right now. The Caves of Chaos at this moment, well, these guys in the Caves of Chaos, if they remain able to operate, they are kind of a regional threat. They just haven't done anything super regional yet. They haven't made their presence known too much yet, because in a way they weren't ready to show themselves, and then they interacted with the wolf folk kind of before they were ready. So the kind of wolf folk kind of holding them back a bit. And then the wolf folk are kind of that local issue. Not that they all have to be, it's all necessarily a violent conflict. And there's some truck right outside my door, fish truck. So I'm just going to close my window, but I can hear it, and it is bothersome. So right now the local issue is for the town is these wolf folk, because they haven't shown themselves to be lycanthropes yet, but they are clearly more powerful than their general garb. They tend to be sort of they're using spears and wearing hides and things like that. And you have sort of organized townsfolk with their defenses and their mail shirts and everything. And if at first blush, you would think of it, well, clearly the well-organized town militia would have an easy time with this rabble. And they're not. They're having a very hard time with it. And they're not really playing by the rules as these folks, these settled folks seem to be wanting to play. So that's kind of the local issue right now. There's a global issue, which is I have this this character who I've named the Hierophant, who has taken there was essentially a War of the Worlds walker buried deep underground, and it kind of became unearthed. And actually, the party was down there for part of that. They didn't really free them. It was just the timing was that they happened to see this thing finally. They didn't see the walker itself, but they were kind of there around the time when the walker sprang out. And he's taken the walker. And right now, so what happened was, all right, this is going to end up being the recap episode more than prep, but that's cool. The Hierophant got the walker out of this this kind of pit that was created when the quarry had become a lake. The Quarry Lake, this was kind of the event that sort of started everything out. The thing that changed the status quo was there was some kind of tremor. There was a quarry that had filled up with water, one of those quarry lakes. There's a bunch of them around. I don't know where you are in the world, but there's quarry lakes all over the place. There were these old quarries. They eventually fill up with water because no one's digging them anymore. No one's, obviously no one's removing the water, so they become lakes. This one in this town, it was an old quarry. It was kind of finished, run dry, whatever they call it, but it broke open, and that's kind of the event that sort of started everything off, and that opened up these things that were buried and sort of hidden away. And one of those things was the location of this walker. The Hierophant got the walker, got out. The Hierophant. And here's where my random encounter with the wolf people come in. I had determined when I rolled up the encounter with the wolf people that the wolf people had an artifact in their village that kept the village undetected by around. So they were in a wood that wasn't really far away from the settled towns around here, but they had this artifact that hid them from detection and allowed them to exist in almost not invisibly, but in just that you had to really try hard to find them. It was somewhat of an illusory kind of effect, right? If you could kind of be in this bubble, and unless you stepped right foot in there, you wouldn't really see it. It would just end up kind of gliding by you, right? Just going around. So they were able to live in this little contented bubble while they had this object. When the Hierophant came out with the walker, the walker's fairly obvious, and the Hierophant decided that he's not ready. His grand plans, whatever his grand plans may be, are not ready yet. But what he needed some way of hiding himself while he tries to figure out get all the other stuff he needs to do what he wants to do. And I've hinted that what he wants to do is basically collapse the different planes. I have two main planes. One is fairy, where all the elves and everything comes from, kind of this sort of like what's the 5th edition version, the Feywild, a little bit different. I think I call it the Endless Wild. I think I call it Endless Wilds. His whole thing is to bring everything together, like this big crunch of all the planes. I think has been hinted at that's his master plan. But he needs a lot. Look, that's a very powerful cataclysmic kind of change. So he's going to need a lot to get there, but he needs some way of staying out of the eye, out of people scrying him, out of things. So, but he knew, I haven't really thought about how he knew that the wolf people had in their possession this object, and he knew where to find them. And that maybe he got it through legends. Maybe he'd been through there himself. He's a powerful figure. So he has access to things, knowledge, and potential things that other folks don't have. So he gets out the walker. He basically blows through the town, destroys half the town or so, heads to a beeline to the woods, uses some jump jets to fly over the woods, basically land straight down. And I hadn't really thought about if you were looking at it from far away, because it was a clearing in the woods, that the clearing would show up, like what the range of this artifact is. So maybe that would make sense. And kind of thinking about, well, maybe he used the jump, that way you could see it from above. But anyway, he jumps down, grabs the stone for himself, I think it's a stone, obliterates some amount of the wolf people with the giant lasers from the walker, and then blasts off again. So the party was actually following the walker. Goodness knows why, because I don't know what they were going to do if they found it. Reminded me of the Joker saying, like, I'm a dog chasing a car. I don't know what I'm going to do if I'm going to get it. I don't know what the players had in mind if they were going to catch up to the walker. But in the end, they couldn't. But as they were moving through in the woods, the random encounter, the wolf people come up. And what were the wolf people's story once I figured out where they fit in was that the walker had just been there to the wolf people and displaced them and took the one thing that made their village safe. So they were stuck. And that's when the party said, hey, why don't you go to the settled lands over there? Which was a great idea, just naive, but that's fine. And that kind of set everything in motion. I hope I've given enough. Tank Pal says, I thought you fully improved it. Improved it. Yeah, I do. It's all improving as I go along. And this guy, the Hierophant, maybe he won't even be the end thing. I don't know how long this campaign is going to go, and I don't know if we'll play long enough to even get to that point. And all kinds of intermediate stuff will come up. In fact, one of the things I was going to use as I want to have somebody show up tonight. Whoops. Which is this Sword of Verdigris. And I'm going to tie the Sword of Verdigris to the shrine that was destroyed. Not sure how to do it yet, but I definitely going to throw in some vibe of the Green Knight in there. And I'm not sure how the party is going to deal with that. But it should be fun. Let's see. Tank Pass says, recording studio question. Are you recording from an office, a bedroom? Do I have a dedicated studio room? I wish I had a dedicated studio room. I wish I had an office. I have neither. This is my bedroom. My unmade bed right now, because I'm all by myself, is right where you can't see it. Window out here, which I will sometimes close the shade. Right now, it's a little bit overcast. The light's actually sort of diffuse anyway, but I kind of have these blinds here, which is sort of diffuse. I have kind of a partial office, but it's kind of somewhat filled with stuff. And the thing is, it's open to my living room. So I could use it today because I'm all by myself. But if my family were here and they're watching TV or something, it's not usable to record. When I'm in Massachusetts, I have some different areas, but I can do things, but I haven't, I don't have the budget right now or the materials to kind of do the sound proofing and getting everything to make it sound really nicely. So I think this actually tends to sound better than there. I just do what I can, I'm in a tiny Brooklyn apartment. I suppose he saw they had a blank spot on his radar. Yeah, Jack Smith, absolutely. I mean, that's the nice thing is I don't need to figure out right now. The players haven't asked me how he found their village if it was so protected. So I don't need to answer that question. And I think a lot of times people get caught up. They have to have all these answers. You don't have to have the answer until the players ask the question. You just need to have some ideas so that it fits in. It shouldn't be so crazy. It shouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. This guy, the Hierophant, he is a high level creature. So while I haven't determined exactly how he found out, there are means out there to find out. That stone that he took, it isn't it's powerful in its own way, but it's not that powerful. There are ways around it. There are ways to get around it, figure out ways. So it's a matter of, is it in the realm of possibility for someone of its level to figure that out? And the answer is yes. And the party understood that implicitly. They're like, they see what this guy's doing. They're like, okay, yeah, he could definitely figure it out. Clearly the stone has limits, so that was good. I always feel like as a GM, keep your blank spaces open. You don't need to tie things down so bad. Tank Pal says, what kind of camera am I using? Laptop or tower? Actually, I'm using just a simple webcam. Logitech. I have some different cameras. And when I've recorded my videos where I'm not streaming, I will often use them. I have a Sony ZV-1 that it's got some issues, but I like it a lot. But I used it for a webcam a couple of times because I thought, well, it's higher quality than this Logitech. But everything's coming in at 1080p. And though, yes, I feel like if I put that other camera up there, the quality, you'd see a quality difference. It was overheating on me and turning itself off. So I need to figure out, I think I had it at 4K because I think I was also doing some recording at the same time. Maybe if I drop it down to 1080p, it won't overheat. But if you saw one of my conversations with Bandit's Keep, his camera was also overheating. And just something nice with the webcam is they don't overheat. And I'm sitting at a fixed distance. I'm not doing a bunch of moving around. There's nothing behind me anyway. I don't, so it actually is kind of working. And like right now, I'm not even, my head's in this tiny little box. So any quality, a lot of it would be lost anyway. I would like to actually get another webcam. They have some 4K webcams, And I keep saying, well, why? I don't want to get a 4K webcam and spend that money. I'd rather get an action camera or something else that I can use in a bunch of different scenarios. But I end up using this a lot, especially as I've been streaming every day. So, you know, it's useful to me. Tank Pal says, they also live in a tiny apartment. I'd like to start recording some myself. Oh, great. I'm glad. Hey, if I inspired you in any way, that is awesome. I would say, and I guess I guess I'm going to wrap it up. I actually didn't get to a lot of prep, but I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm glad everybody hung out with me, and I'm happy to hang on a little bit longer. I'm not in any huge rush today, so maybe I will do some. We'll get to some prep. I've thought about doing some videos of kind of behind the scenes stuff as a fledgling creator, because I am in no means I feel like I'm any kind of expert on anything. If folks are interested in that, I could probably post them up, but I would say number one, don't worry about having the be all end all equipment. It really doesn't exist. There's always going to be a new camera coming out. There's always going to be something coming out. And it's really, I felt it myself. I think, you know, I've heard it called the imposter syndrome. You see some people with really amazing setups and you think, gosh, I don't have that. I can't do this. I'm just going to look like an idiot, or I feel like I don't belong, or I feel like I'm an amateur. And I don't know how many videos I'm up to. I don't know. I think I'm at least north of 200 videos at this point, and I still feel like I'm an amateur. You just got to kind of do it. It's like DMing, right? I mean, I would say doing these videos, it's like DMing. You feel like you can do it and it's something you want to do, just do it. Put together the best equipment you have. There is some kind of baseline. People need to be able to hear you. People don't even have to see you. Plenty of people put out just those videos where they'll use they'll use sort of what's Ken Burns effects. Well, they'll just sort of put stills on there and maybe zoom in and out a little bit and do some things. You could certainly do that. I do, I guess, what I think they call it talking head style, where you see my head, sometimes in large, sometimes in small, but it's there. But that's what you feel comfortable with. I have I'll bring down the mic so you can see it. I have this mic here, and my voice might dissipate a little bit, which is a nice mic, which lets me record without, it's just out of view. It's like, no more than that much above, out of away from my mouth. Something like that is good, but there's tons of different mics, different styles. Very cheap ones. There's a Zoom mic that I have. It's kind of one of my backup mics. I have a lot that I think is very good. I like this one because it's out of frame, but a lot of people just have, they have their mic in the frame with them. Nobody cares. I mean, I think that's the other thing is one time I was getting kind of caught up in, I don't want it in the frame, and I want this and I want that. Nobody cares. I watched like The Ringer. They do sports and pop culture and things like that, and they'll throw up streams and videos right after stuff will happen, say the NBA Finals, and those guys, like half, they'll be kind of split screen, and half the screen will have their mic in it. The people who are watching that, they don't care. That they're in there. People are going to come for the content. Hopefully, they're going to like you. They're going to like what you're saying or appreciate what they're telling you, and they're just going to come. And I've been really, again, if I can just say thanks to all you guys for coming and hanging out, and folks who have supported me by subscribing to the channel and joining me on Patreon and maybe dropping something on Coffee. You just find people who, hopefully you can find the audience, people who appreciate and want to appreciate what you're doing and see value in it, and will interact with you. And I think that stuff really stands out more than if you look the crispiest of crisp. Again, you want people to hear you, so that you want to reach some certain baselines of, can I get some kind of decent sound out of a mic so it doesn't sound like I'm talking in a wind tunnel or have horrible echoes. But there's so many tools to do that, free tools, especially if you're on your laptop. There's something called NVIDIA Broadcast. If you have an NVIDIA sound card, or graphics card rather, and there are other ones that do it too. And even on Zoom, and I think Skype, and a bunch of other ones that will take out all kinds of back. You go, if you're just streaming, they run these algorithms. It doesn't even take up that much CPU. It doesn't seem like. They'll just get rid of all kinds of background stuff. After the fact, if you're recording, you can run it through. I use Reaper, which you can try out, basically unlimited trial for free. I mean, it has after 45 days, you're supposed to pay for it, but doesn't enforce it. So you can really, and Reaper's an amazing tool, and it's got all kinds of things for removing noise. So you can really use whatever tools you have to start. I would maybe get some kind of cheap mic that's got XLR. And I don't want to go too much in the weeds on it, but please feel free to ping me a question. Also, Bandits Keep, he knows a lot about this stuff. Also, get a cheaper but decent mic, and you don't have to spend more than $50 or $60 to get one. But you could probably do it on your phone if you just really want to start and you don't have it, and maybe even your laptop. I haven't tried using the mic on my laptop. I don't know how horrible it is. But you just got to do it, like DMing, right? These videos, it's like DMing. You feel like you want to urge to try it. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do it. Just come to the table with something to say and your own personality. And I feel like I'm still learning to bring my personality in. I think sometimes I hold myself back a little bit, but I'm getting more comfortable as I go. I know that might sound weird, but I feel like I'm not quite there yet. It's all learning. Let's see. Some more stuff from Tang Pao. Social credit is much more important these days. Yeah. You just got to find, I mean, the one thing, it's interesting, and I don't know when it happened, and I don't know at what point, but I reached some kind of tipping point. And that's when I started getting a lot more people interacting with me directly, because there were a fair amount of time I was making videos, and I would get, I get some likes, to get some things, but very little interaction. If I streamed, nobody would be on the stream. Or maybe I get maybe one person or two people. And then I feel like I just hit some point where all of a sudden, maybe I just had a big enough audience at that point. People started to kind of come in, where now I can consistently have, like right now I got 13 people in here, which for me is a lot. I can get 5, 6, 8 people, not only people in here, but also just talking to me, which makes it a lot easier, because when you're streaming or doing these videos, it's kind of a weird feeling, because it feels like you're talking to yourself. I guess it takes a certain, maybe that's the real skill, is can you talk to yourself without being weirded out by it? Because, I get to, I have sort of 2 monitors set up, right? So I have the Mindmap is here in front of me, camera on top of that. So when I'm looking sort of at the camera or looking at the Mindmap, I'm looking straight. I have the chat over here. And so I'll kind of turn to the side. I'm looking at chat, looking at the front. When I'm looking at the front, I'm just talking to this little eyeball, like I'm talking to Hal in 2001. It is really a little bit weird, and I've kind of gotten used to it. I feel like sometimes my wife or my daughter will walk in, just kind of look over here, because the door's way over there, so it's totally off camera. But like, and look at me, and it just looks. I mean, I guess in the age of Zoom and everything now, since COVID, it probably looks a lot less strange than it used to. It's a little bit weird, and that's something that you kind of have to develop. And at least now I say, hey, I can look over here and say, oh, hey, there's actually people watching me. Because there are other times streaming, especially earlier on, but even still now when I stream some of the video games that I'm playing, because I just like video games, and I know it's not totally on point for the channel, but I like them, and I feel like they're kind of, I don't know, fantasy RPG adjacent. I just want to play them, right? I'm talking to myself, and I just kind of hope that people tune in, and if people watch it afterwards, it's not dead air. But it's something I learned, or I am learning. All right, let's see. Hey, Josh Allen, keep on it, man. I said the same thing to Bandits Keep. Both of your perspectives so refreshing amongst a sea of dungeon dudes. Well, thanks. I really got a nice. I should look it up. I really got a nice comment over the weekend that I feel like I didn't give enough thanks to, because it was really nice. Let me see if I can look it up, because it was really nice, and it was the one. My wife, my wife is totally supportive of this, but she doesn't really get it. She's not a role-playing person. I've tried to explain to her kind of what it is a few times. She doesn't really, like I said, she doesn't really understand it. And this is even kind of one step removed. So it's like one, just kind of playing the games. She's like, I don't really get it, but okay. But now it's the other level of, now you're talking about people running and playing the games. It's like that other remove where it's like, okay, I really don't kind of get it. But over the weekend, let me see if I can. Is this the one? Hold on, let me see. And look, I'm lucky enough that people send lots of nice. I feel like I've been super lucky. I don't feel like I've gotten a that sometimes comes with these things. Maybe that's only because they haven't discovered, the trolls haven't found me yet, and they will find me at some point soon. Okay, this was sent to me by Andy Britton a couple days ago. It said, Todd, I love, well, 3 loves. I love your channel. Please keep doing what you're doing. I played BX D&D with my school friends back in the early 80s, but had to put it on hold while life got in the way. And now that I'm catching up with all this again, it's such a joy to hear your thoughts and acquired wisdom. Every time I watch your videos, I am a kid again, filled with an eternal sense of wonder. I just want to say thank you. Look, I really didn't even have words to respond to it. I sent it to my wife. I said, and I didn't really give her a reasoning for it, but I just sort of want to say, like, this is why I do the videos. This is why I kind of keep doing them, because folks, really enjoy them. And I try really hard not to be, and I don't even listen to the Dungeon Dudes. I'm not even sure if that's referring to a specific podcast or video stream, because one thing I've said before is I don't watch them, not because I don't feel like I'm above them. I think I'm very envious. Most of those guys have tons and tons more views and everything than I do. I wish I had half their views. It's just because I don't want to become either reactionary to them, or I don't want me to sort of, I think it just happens by chance. You're listening to people say things, you start to just say what they say. And I want to kind of keep my own perspective, especially if I feel like I'm going to do something. Someone says, oh, they listen to this review of this thing that I'm going to do a review of. Okay, I don't want to listen. But I really appreciate it, because I try really hard not to do the stuff that doesn't appeal to me. I don't care about top 10 spells of whatever edition. I don't care. Best build for a bard. I don't care. I try to get in the stuff that, and I hope it comes through. I think if the one thing that maybe comes through is I hope that the stuff I'm talking about, you see my enthusiasm for it, because I am enthusiastic for it. It's the stuff that I enjoy getting into the weeds on and enjoy. And that's what I try to focus on. I mean, it's one of those things that at some point I kind of thought about, I made somewhat of a conscious choice. I could try to just chase viewing numbers by doing top 10 lists, things I hate, things I love, things wizards messed up, or whatever. I could get into that kind of stuff, which I think draws more eyeballs, but it's not me. And I didn't want to do that. And it was, so I kept what I'm doing. And, with Daniel from Band Skeep, I don't know if he followed me. I don't know who discovered whom, but we just kind of found each other. And it was just kind of neat, because we were both sort of on the same wavelength. That's kind of the things we like. And I really got to give a lot of credit to him, because he really started commenting on the channel and kind of giving me a little bit more of an audience. But I think a couple times he linked to my stuff from his community tab, and he's got more viewers than I have. So he sort of lent me some of the eyeballs that were on his channel, which I really think helped me out a lot. And of course, we've been able to collaborate a few times now, and I think we're going to keep collaborating, which is great, because I really dig them. So this is kind of why I'm doing it. Let's see. Tank Pal says, you've used the discussion of hex crawling are so nice and refreshing. Thanks. I mean, those are by far, my hex crawling videos are by far the most popular ones. So I try to keep kind of touching on them, because, there's always stuff to say. And I think as far as I want to sort of, I want to kind of keep them going. And I feel like it's nice to refresh them up, but they're by far the most popular things that I do, or that I've done. Tank Pal says, not enough OSR people really lay out how they do things. I'm not sure why that is. I mean, I don't feel like there's some kind of secret sauce. I'm certainly not trying to protect any kind of secret sauce. I at some point it'd be great to run a one shot or anything. I don't feel like I'm like the DM's DM. I don't think anyone's going to watch me if I GM the game thinking like, oh my gosh, he's the next whatever, like the next critical role or whatever. Like, I don't think so. I'm not going to put that pressure on my home game guys. They just want to play a game, so that's what we're doing. None of them even really know about the channel. I think they know somewhat that it exists. I think I mentioned at one point, like, oh yeah, I have this channel, but I never really followed through with telling them what it was about. So they don't know that I'm discussing the game here. But if some point I would love to collaborate with some folks, and I was over at Homebrew Detritus and I played in their game, and that was a great one shot. Maybe I could do a one shot sometime. Might be fun to do something different. Tank Pal says, I think it helps keep my content original. Well, thanks. Yeah. I mean, you got to find your own angle, right? There's no point in being if you're, I don't know, if you're just Matt Colville 2.0, you got to really do something significant, right? Because we already have Matt Colville 1.0, right? We don't need how many Matt Colvilles, you got one. So hopefully I don't feel like I come off as Bandits Keep 2.0, or Bandits Keep doesn't come off as Hex Press 2.0 or whatever. And we kind of have our things, because that kind of original voice, I think, is the most important thing. Regardless of your medium, having that voice is what you gotta develop. Josh Allen says, yes, what happened to you? You're better off just staying your own course. Yeah, keep collaborating with like-minded folks like Bandits. Yeah, I just want to find nice people. I think that's the other thing with the OSR that's frustrating sometimes is, and I know that where you are on the political spectrum, some things bother you. I don't want to deal with problematic people. And it's not even me if it's like, well, I don't have a problem with it. I know that other folks have problems, but that's kind of enough for me. It's like you have the friend, and that friend says inappropriate things or does stuff, and you just be like, you know what? I'm friends with him. I've known him since high school, so I get who he is, but I'm not going to introduce him as other people because he is who he is. And unfortunately with the OSR, it's really getting in this weird space where there's a whole bunch of characters in there that are kind of not. I just wish it was different. I just wish it was different, because I don't want to be trying to vet things and think, am I gonna recommend this for it only to come back and bite me, which has unfortunately been made tough of late. Tank Powell's been thinking a lot about online DMing lately. Yeah, I mean, as far as online DMing goes, I just use Discord and Discord. I mean, that's it. And for my game, it's worked fine. I think it's one of those things. I think sometimes that people put a lot of stock into saying, well, I'm an experienced player. And half the time, I think I'd rather not deal with experienced players, because experienced players have their own way of doing things, their own expectations. I've seen people post and say, well, I want to be in a game, and it's got to be like this, it's got to be like that, it's got to have this, can't have that. New players, they don't have those things. They don't care. They just want to play. And ultimately, that's what I want. I always want players who are going to play. And if you're experienced, I'm not going to, it doesn't disqualify you, but I want you to be open, and I'm sure I fall in the same boat. There are certain games, hey, you want to play this game? I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. And I'm like, no, I don't, I'm not. I hear a little bit like, yeah, that's not for me. Right. I think that's absolutely fine too. But as far as the tools for online DMing, I found that new players, I've seen guys post like, we need to be on Roll20, we need to have Fog of War applied, it needs to have this. These new guys, they don't care. Tools don't care. They just want to play. And that's what I like. And for us, Discord works fine. I like Theater of the Mind. I prefer Theater of the Mind. I don't have really the time or bandwidth to be setting up battle maps for Roll20 and trying to figure all that stuff out. I should probably do a video, because I feel like battle maps, as much as I love looking at them and I love the creativity, I feel like they're very kind of samey. They seem to have the same layout, a lot of them, and it forces you to start, if you're going to use them, it forces you to start tailoring your kind of encounters to the battle maps. So if I go and I download 5 battle maps, and this is where my battles are going to take place, then my battles have to take place there. One of the things I like is, my battles can take place anywhere. I don't care. In the hallway, in the room that maybe they're supposed to be in another room. Maybe they're out somewhere completely different. Maybe they're on on the roof. Maybe they're in the basement. I don't need battle maps, so I don't need to worry about battle maps. So I don't need to spend time prepping battle maps. And then if I don't have a battle map, everything doesn't crumble to a halt. Well, I got to go find one. But as soon as you start looking at, well, I'm going to use this battle map I've downloaded, then the battle has to take place there, which means, am I starting to maneuver the players that the battle has to be there? And I don't need all that noise right now. Tank Pow says, you only use Discord. That's cool. I'm not sure if it worked for everything. What do you do for handouts and maps? Well, you can post. So I don't give a lot of handouts really. I just usually type it out or copy paste. You can, if I wanted to make a handout. So for example, if I wanted to have a letter and I wanted it to be more thematic than me just copying from Word or Notepad and pasting in what the letter said, you can create stuff as images or PDFs or whatever you want to, and then just upload it to Discord. I don't know. I mean, there are definitely, if you're not a Nitro server, and my server's not Nitro, there are limits to file sizes, but they're not too egregious for things like that. Or you could put them on Dropbox and link to them. that way. And then I use a free bot called Dice Maiden to roll the dice. There are other dice bots, but because I'm doing kind of a modded BX, having a standard like a D&D 5th edition dice bot kind of thing I don't need it. I think it's called Avray is one that I think is popular. That's for kind of 5th edition based. There might be other ones that have all these rule sets built in, but since mine's somewhat custom and it's old school anyway, just a simple bot that lets me roll dice is fine. And the images, same thing. I can upload them. If I have one, I don't give them a lot of maps. They have one map that's kind of a general area map, but that's the only map they have. Everything else they got to figure out, do themselves. So, you know, when they were dungeon crawling in the first dungeon inside this kind of abandoned mine area, they mapped it themselves. And if they didn't map it themselves, well, they just didn't have a map. And then they, like I said, they just have kind of somewhat of a regional map, and all that map shows is just some basic landmarks and kind of where they are, their town, the next neighboring town, and then this other place, and then kind of where the woods are, that river that they were in, it kind of runs through there. It's really just a very basic sort of just map of only of this particular region. So everything else is up to them to figure out, and if they want to map it. And they of that one dungeon they were in, they actually, 2 of them were mapping it. And I didn't even have to tell them. They just did it on their own. They just were mapping it like mapping it, which was cool. Now, nothing says these people want to play your game, you have to want to play. Right. There's that thing with experienced players that, yeah, you gotta, you know, it's a harder sell sometimes, and they come with their own expectations. And this is something that I really love about not being in 5th edition is there's all these arguments 5th edition. Well, you need to include all classes and all things. You need to include this. You need to include that. And of course, my point of view overall is no, you don't. Whatever setting you want to run, whatever works in that setting, you keep. Whatever doesn't work in that setting, you get rid of. And your pitch to your players is, do you want to play in this setting? If nobody wants to play, then either you change the setting to suit, or you don't have a game. But there's no absolutes as to what your this or that you could have. And OSR, if you start with BX, there's so little to begin with that you're essentially, it's all additive, right? You're just doing vanilla BX. It's such a bare, slim, trim system that anything you want to add is adding to. You don't have to worry about, well, there's 800 handbooks and I got to sift through what I want to include or not. Or someone's going to come and say, well, I've got this book and I want to play Tasha's. So you have to allow Tasha's. Like, I don't need to allow anything. It's all a conversation. And I'm not saying be dictatorial about it, but at a certain point, I want to play. Like, if I want to play Conan, that's my goal. I really want to run a group in Conan's world. There aren't like tieflings in Conan's world. And no, I'm not going to break Conan's world to put tieflings in it because I want to run Conan's world. And hopefully I get a bunch of other players that want to run Conan's world. And part of that is, no, there aren't tieflings in there, or at least not tieflings as tieflings. Maybe I can figure out something else. Maybe I can't, but nobody should be just adamant of, no, it must be. But you get that a lot with the 5th edition. So, and I'm sure there are people people have their things for older editions too. I'm not trying to turn this into a new versus old. The people who want to play Kenders, people who hate Kenders, people who hate gnomes. I want to have gnomes. Got to have gnomes. Oh, I hate gnomes. I have gnomes. I'm not going to have dwarves. So, there's all kinds of people have their own picadillos. Thieves, the original picadillo, whether your game has thieves in it or not, right? Goes back way to the beginning. It's all about finding folks to play what you want to play with you. Tank possibly only be using theater of the mind. Yeah, I think if you can, with new players also, you could start them off getting them to picture it. Just be patient with them. Because I know one of the players at the beginning, I was kind of repeating myself a lot. But of course, I don't feel like I'm always perfect. You have to be humble too, right? If you're giving a description, you think it's perfectly accurate. But you're reading it or you're telling it to them. You're also looking at the picture or the text or whatever you have there. You have this better view. You know what it is. So you have to make sure that when you are describing it, if players are having troubles visualizing it, walk them through. And I think especially for new players who may not be used to it, if they need to hear it again, need to maybe hear it a different way, then do that. Because I feel and this is just anecdotal, but one of the new players, when we first were dungeon delving, there was a lot of that. I don't quite see it. Can you tell it to me again? Okay, there's that. Right, that was happening. I don't feel like that's happening at all anymore. Either I've gotten better at understanding what he needs to hear from me, or he has he's gotten better to getting on my wavelength. I'm sure maybe some combination, but it was something that we kind of went through a period of kind of getting used to it. And now we're just in it. And I never have had anybody in this game asking me, can I draw it out? Asking me, can I do anything? Asking me, do you have a picture? Like it's just been working, whether we've been in the dungeon, whether we've been in the wilderness. It's just been working right now. And that's not to say that tonight or next week or whenever it'll all come off the rails and we will be totally it's cross talking, won't be able to understand each other. But right now it's working like a well-oiled machine. Tank Pal says, okay, I was not sure how much mapping you had the players do. Yeah, I mean, it's up to them. They don't have to map. But if they want to map, they're going to map it. And that's kind of, I think, what I said to them. If you want to, you don't have to map it. But if you want to find your way around and find your way back and maybe come back another day and pick up where you left off, then you'll want to map it, right? That's how I put it to them. You don't need to map it. I'm not going to enforce you mapping it. But what's going to happen is you're going to get down there and you're going to need to get out again. You're going to need a map or you're going to need to try to remember. So whatever you do to remember, do it to remember, right? But I'm not forcing you to map, but I'm not giving you a map either. That's how I expressed it. All right, I'm trying to think. So this Sword of Verdigris, getting way back to my prep. Let's see, how long have I been on here? Okay, almost an hour and a half. I'm not sure how much I'll keep going. I'll go for a little bit longer. So I kind of have on this side, if we're looking at this mind map, and I haven't used this one in Miro. This is my first foray into Miro. So I've kind of got factions to one side, kind of geography type stuff to the other side. And so I've really just been sort of thinking about the last couple of days that what is the force inside my caves of chaos. I've talked about that there's this kind of ill earth stone. I don't even know where to put that. It's not really a, let me see. I haven't really called it yet anything yet. I haven't figured out what I'm going to call it yet, so I'm going to put that right there. That's the artifact that is causing the Caves of Chaos to be what it is. In my game, the fairy encompasses. I guess why I say this in my game, elves, goblins, orcs, and a lot of the other creatures are actually the same species, but they are. I'm still kind of I haven't got the language down in my brain, but basically in the sort of at the beginning of the creation, the Fey creatures were creatures that were sort of the first time that sort of life had been infused with sort of emotion and kind of emotion in its sort of raw state. So you get, if you think about the image of, say, a Galadriel, that in this creature, they would call it an elf because it's sort of fair and glamorous. So that's what elves mean. Elves, goblins, orcs, they all refer to the same creatures, but creatures who have imbue these different emotions or merge with them. This kind of, so you have these sort of elves, which are these sort of tall, just beautiful kind of glamour. They're all about love, but it can be love in the same way that when Galadriel in the Mirror of Galadriel talks about how you could love them and despair. That's what that's what you can get with elves. That it's not just in a giving way. It can be very much in this way of that they need it, that they require devotion and love. But that's sort of elves. Goblins, it's all about that kind of greed. Orcs, it's about sort of anger and warfare and those kind of things. So that it's like you have, if you were to see one of these Fey creatures, it's like at the beginning, they sort of almost formless, and then they kind of develop down these paths, and they develop down these paths becoming tied to these different emotions. They sort of, whichever emotion they end up being tied down kind of lends them their form. And the way this my Feywild works is it's all tied to belief. Like the actual, it's actually, if you were to see it with the eyes of like an elder god, the land is actually formlessness, but it's held together by group belief in the geography. So I've mentioned on the one time that the players were in there, how one of the players, their character had spent some time in the Feywild, how some of the geography can change. Things, spatial relationships can change. They can move around because as things happen, people's sort of confidence or belief in certain things can fade, and therefore it actually changes the environment. A lot of it seems static only because there's so much of a population that has invested it with belief that it's pretty rock solid right now. But something could happen and it could lose that solidity, and it could actually start to shift, change, maybe collapse, right? So this is kind of where all these fake creatures come from. So the particular, and it's not, I put court in here because I don't have a better word yet. It's not the whole court, but I don't know what I would call. I kind of like the idea of the name court for these different groups, hierarchies of the Fae, which obviously I didn't invent. It's an old term. The term's been around forever, but I don't know what I would call an offshoot, because it's like an outpost, because there are incursions, so to speak, of Fae creatures, different types, into the prime material plane for various reasons. Either to get a foothold because of conquest, either to kick out, to get resources. Because the one thing is, why the prime is special. It's something I like to think about. Why is the prime material plane special? Why is it the center of things as we think about it, as opposed to one of the other planes? And this is because this is where the real, the real forces of creation really became sort of concretized. So, for example, in my world, you can get jewels, right, in the elemental plane of Earth, but they're not true jewels because they're not imbued with the powers of original creation. Only the gold, silver, the metals, and the jewels that are found in the prime material plane are imbued with that original magic that you can use in spells and things. So continually, creatures to get at those original remnants of creation, these things, these shells that hold the power, like the magic of the world, they have to come here. They have to come to the prime material plane. The stuff they can get elsewhere, it looks the same, but they're dead, they're empty. So they got to come here. Why this court has come here? Did they seek out the stone, this whatever, the Iller stone kind of thing? Did the Iller stone just happen to get one? I haven't figured all that out yet. I'm still working on it. But that's who's going to be in the Caves of Chaos and there's going to be like the whole host of creatures like in the Caves of Chaos, the bugbears and all those other things are going to be in there, but all of those are kind of different types of Fae. And again, they're kind of playing off these different emotions, like where they came out in the sea of, if you look at one of those color wheels of all the different emotions, where do they kind of pop out is kind of what their form ends up taking and sort of what their attitude is. And of course you can find exceptions and there is some fluidity there, but that's basically how it works. But so right now I just put goblins and orcs in there. It's kind of as placeholders, but all the relations I haven't figured out yet. Let's see. Tank Pow, I think your players get used to the way you describe things. It's like getting used to UI in a new video game. Yes. So it's nice to be consistent too, right? When you're talking to your players, be consistent, because the more consistent you are, they can catch that rhythm. Tank Pow also says, what about the faction going to the shrine, destroying it, stealing the sword from its resting place in the shrine? Which sword? You mean this? Oh, so it was a stone. Sorry, not a sword. That was the guy, the Hierophant. He's like a faction on his own, but he's vanished. The Hierophant took his piece and vanished. And the party at one point was going to try to figure out which was cool. They were going to look for, well, how can we try to figure out where he went? But other interests came up. But periodically stuff will happen on that world level, or maybe starting on the regional level, but ultimately real level with him that might get them back on that if they want to. But they've kind of put that aside for right now, which is not bad. Nice Donaldson call out. Oh yeah, thank you. I gotta go back and read it, but I always liked it. Talking Donaldson, the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant Unbeliever. I know, there is content warning. There is sort of a rape element that kind of sets things off in there. I haven't read it in forever, so I don't know if it's aged. I read I read it as a much younger person when I think it was a different age anyway, and things didn't really concern me then. I haven't read it lately to see if as it aged well. Does it seem as well done as I felt like it was when I first read it? But I really do enjoy the series, and Yellowstone always fascinated me. So it's nice to pull that out. But I'm going to call it something else and get my own twist. I just quite haven't figured out everything on that yet. It's not warm, fuzzy, feel good stuff. No, it's not. I mean, I guess it ends well. I guess I trying to struggle with what the ending is, but no, it's not. Yeah, it's not. It's not. It was at the time. It really felt different to me, and so back when, and I don't know when it came out exactly. I remember when I discovered it. You know, you read through Tolkien and you read through some other ones, and they're like, wow. And then you pick up like something else. Like, I don't want to dog the man because I wish I could have the career that he's had, but like the Sword of Shannara and the Shannara series, which it felt to me back then, like, man, this is really just a total rip off of Lord of the Rings. I know it has its own elements, and whatever, but it just felt to me like, God, man, they're just, someone was like, I need to have my own Lord of the Rings, and here it is, Sword of Shannara kind of thing. And I felt like there was a lot of those. And when I don't remember when it came out, either when it came out or when I discovered it, it was really a breath of fresh air in a lot of those series. It was like a trilogy, which always made me feel like, oh my gosh, because Lord of the Rings was a trilogy. Everything else got to be a trilogy. But it was good. It was different. It was interesting. The hero was different. It had its own angles on things, had its own different ways of doing things. Really good. And it didn't overstay its welcome either. Like, I kind of got into the Wheel of Time stuff back when it was starting to come out. But man, I mean, granted, it felt kind of derivative to me in some ways, but I was still enjoying it and had its own stuff too. But it just took so long. And they just started getting just dragging things out with these different characters. And and unfortunately, the poor man passed away, wasn't even able to finish the darn thing because it was just getting slower and slower and slower with each book. And I just kind of dropped it. I don't even know how it turned out. Hopefully it ended well. Yeah, at the time, right, Tank Pal. A lot of them. There were so many kind of Lord of the Rings with a twist, or trying to put their own twist on it, trying to make it we're in the future. Oh, this or that. And it's just, and you read them because you got to take a break between, you can't read just Lord of the Rings over and over again. I mean, I love reading it. I could read it 1,000 times more, but you got to take a break. You want something else, but you want some other fantasy stuff. And there wasn't. So you just read these and you're like, oh, again. But this one was different. But it's not for everybody. I would totally admit that the Chronicles of Tom's Covenant is not for everybody. And I haven't read it in forever. So I want to say that it might not even be for me anymore. But it was at the time. And that Yellowstone always hooked me. Bob Mostel says, the lost science aspect that evolved in Brooks' stuff is interesting. Okay, I probably didn't get that far. Back in the day when I could read a book a day. Yeah, well, some of those books were really like Dragonlance. They were so light. I like some of the stuff in Dragonlance. Okay, Raceland was cool. I liked Raceland. These books were so light. I just felt like you were just going like, and they were gone. And you know, some of those Shannara books I felt like read really fast too, just because they were just so light. Not trying, and look, they weren't trying to be deep. Okay, I'm not trying to accuse them of faking depth like the Matrix movies or something. Okay. But they were just light as feathers. I felt like I could just read those at a bathroom break. And I probably did. But yeah. Hey, if you guys have any, I'd love to hear some, reading stuff. One of these, I did want to do this. I guess something I could talk about. I was thinking about doing sometime later in the week is doing an Appendix N on the Cloaker. Oops, about to hit my mic. Because I believe I found, I was reading through some Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stories, and there seems to be one, as I'm going to fix my mic real quick. Seems to be one that there is a story that I read that I think, and I didn't check it out, is kind of where Cloakers came from, which is kind of a cool story. I think it's a little too long for me to read the whole thing like I did the Abominations of Yondo. But I thought it might be neat to get in there and just kind of see how because Cloakers are those kind of creatures that I think are kind of tend to be seen as with kind of a chuckle and a humor, like, oh, isn't that a goofy thing? It's a creature that looks like a cloak. Ha ha ha, her, dur, dur. But in reality, when you read it in the context of the story, it definitely feels a little bit more sinister. You might get a little more like, oh, I get at least why people were supposed to be scared of it, or at least it's supposed to be like, ooh, as opposed to a ha 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 ha, a cloak tried to attack you kind of thing. So I might do that later in the week. I'm definitely going to do a OSR roundup this week, probably back to its normal Friday, since I don't have any Bandits Keep chats this week. So probably Friday we'll be back to doing that. Oh yeah, something else. Well, I still have a bunch of you here. Give me some ideas. If there's stuff you want me to talk about, if you have questions that you feel like would make a good video that you think might help other folks, right? Something I could answer, and if I have an answer or an idea about that could be beneficial to not just you, but a bunch of people, even if it's just you, be happy to do it. Drop me a line here. You can put it in the YouTube. I have that community now that I'm over 1,000 subscribers. I've got this community tab where you can drop things in there. I had my Twitter thing. Maybe if my Twitter's not on. I mean, it's not on. It's just, where did it go? I had a thing for Twitter. Oh, captions. Is that it? There we go. Woo! Look at that. Drop me a line on Twitter. I haven't been on Reddit in a while. I mean, I've been doing the roundups on Reddit, but I haven't been posting on my own. I have a subreddit, Hexed Press. You can also go there. I have to get back to posting stuff on there. Social media is a big pain in the butt, and it's one of those eternal problems where I feel like I run out of time to post things everywhere that I'm supposed to, and I run out of gas. I run out of time. And I just feel like I end up just being behind. Like, I'm behind posting stuff to Patreon. Just because I usually will post, like if I drop something on YouTube, I'll usually post it to Patreon. And then I get behind on that because I'm trying to post it in 8 different places, and then other stuff's happening. And then I'm like 4 or 5 days behind posting on Patreon. So I have to do better. And I am going to post I used to post more content to Patreon, like Patreon only content. And I'm trying to get back to doing that. So I'm working on that too. But social media, trying to manage that stuff is a pain, but plenty of places to reach me. And if you actually reach out to me and I get pinged, like comments, YouTube, Facebook, wherever, I think I'm pretty good about getting back. I try to stay on top of responding to people. Let's see. Here we got something. Brian McNaughton, Throne of Bones, a Grimm's short story collection, is pretty sweet. Awesome, Dave Mills. Thanks. I will put that on my list. In fact, I'll make a note. Can I make a note right on here? Is that text? Brian McNaughton, Throne of Bones. Reminds me of a line from Box Trolls, where the girl sees the box trolls where they live, and she's like, I expected rivers of blood and thrones of bone. It's pretty funny. I love that movie, Box Trolls, by the way. Shout out to Box Trolls. Tank Pal says, it always seemed a very gothic creature to me. That sounds great. Yeah, it totally is. Tank Pal says, think about it and send them some ideas. Yes, please send me ideas. And, like, it doesn't have to be hex crawling. It doesn't have to be something I've covered before. I'm always open to spreading my wings and talking about other things. I would like to do some more system stuff, because I'm not a BX only person. I'm definitely not a 5e only person. So I love reading systems. I have a few things to read. Oh yeah, this week I think I'm going to try to get to Tower of the Silver Axe, which the author was awesome enough to not only send me the PDF of, but send me that I don't know if it's a hardcover, and I think it's a paperback, but still send me an actual physical copy of it, which is seems really nice. I try not to read it too much, because when I want to do the read-alongs on the channel, part of the whole pitch, the shtick, is that it's like we're at a game store. And I mean, I used to do this, and I would probably do it still if my friends were around and we went to the game store together anymore. But you go to the game store and you're looking at books and you're calling each other over and saying, hey man, look at this. Hey man, look at that. And you're kind of flipping through reading it. That's kind of where the inspiration came from. So part of that is that I'm not pre-reading it. I'm not just trying to find good stuff or bad stuff. I'm just taking it as it comes. So when I get something like that, I'm like, oh, I want to read it, but I'm like, no, I can't read it. So I've held off so far. Jack Smith, I think the Vaults of Yo Vombus has a cloaker type monster. Jack Smith, who wrote that? If you know, Vaults of Yo Vombus cloakers. You got a name? I'll take it. Otherwise, I can search for it later. Not a big deal if you don't know it. I can find it later. Oh, it's another Clark Ashton Smith. Okay. That's cool. I'll check that one out too. Tank Piles are very much into studying other systems. Yeah, other systems are cool. And I think there's often stuff that we can take. I've done stuff on a little bit on kind of stuff you can take from Powered by the Apocalypse. I like I don't know if I covered, I don't know. I did one. I can't remember what it was on. Might have been on GM moves because I thought GM moves were interesting. I don't necessarily feel like, I don't really necessarily, I've never run one or played in one. So I don't know how they work and how restricted I might feel by sitting inside these different moves. But I do like conceptually how they've laid out these different types of moves and kind of things associated with it so that it really, you can think about the kinds of things that you are doing. And so it gives you that way of thinking about what you're doing as opposed to just doing stuff. It gives you this kind of process of think about it. Like, what are you responding to and how are you responding to it? Which I liked. I think fronts, which comes up in at least some of the power. It might be a core thing. I know it comes up in like Blades in the Dark, I think might have. Anyway, fronts for managing sort of factional world event kind of stuff, I think is also, threats is also really good. Clark Ashton Smith. Okay, I got that. I will check that out. I might be in the collection of his I already have. I think there are several collections. I think I have, I think maybe collection 1. Note to myself. Maybe, I mean, if I do have that one, that'd be great because then I could do a little bit of both and we could compare and contrast different styles of cloakers. Maybe there's more than one. It was interesting because the cloakers is when I found them was actually Monster Manual 2. I thought it would have been earlier. I mean, not that Monster Manual 2 is old by any means. For some reason, I thought it would have been in the first one, but it was not. This one has 83. I'm guessing this might be a first. I don't know if it's first edition. Let's see. What's Tank Pow got? I've been reading Monster of the Week. I like the idea of GM moves too, and I like the concept of the resolution system. It's very interesting. Yeah, I like the 2d6. My one issue, and I've thought about this because my current system kind of uses somewhat of a 2d6 system, is, and I've said this before, I guess I'll repeat it because not everybody hears everything. It's from a new player's perspective. The one thing that I will give to the D20 style system is that it's easy to learn. A lot of us, I certainly fall into this camp. I look at something like BX and think of it, my gosh, it's so easy. But as I go through every week with my game, there's a little bit of friction with the learning and with the retention, especially when you're only playing like I am for a couple of hours every week with gaps in between because lives are busy, with using all these different mechanics. Roll over some, roll under some, use a D6, use D20, use percentile. It's a little bit much for players and GMs, especially when they're not in it all the time. If you're in it all the time, sure, you get over that little hump and then it's, oh, it's great. And no, it's cute. No, look at these. We can say these different things about what these quirky little systems say about the game or what we like about them. But for someone who's playing, coming to it fresh, and you're not super embedded in it, we can just say, roll a D20, add some modifiers to it, get something, and you're done. It's great. And I don't think you can understand. I know a lot of people talk about, and I will say the 5th edition, like, oh, 5th edition is so complicated. I think to a lot of players, it's simpler. And that's it, because it may have a lot of rules, but the rules all go the same way. The mechanics all have this one resolution system. So once you figure that resolution system out, at the end of the day, regardless of all the rules, you're still picking up that 1d20, and you just got to ask your GM, what do I add to it or subtract to it or do whatever? And that's it. So as much as I really like the 2d6 and whatever you roll, 8 is, I don't know, 8 or 9 is a success, and then 10 or 11 is like a big success, or maybe 12, whatever that is, and I like it. I need to figure out, I want to figure out a way to adapt it more to D20, because I think if I'm going to do my like Heartbreaker system, either I'd have to do everything 2D6, and I'm not sure that I want to or can, or I want to do everything D20. I don't want to have mix and match. So that's where I'm at with that. But I do like it. Monster Manual 2 is a nice book. Yeah, it is. It is. I don't love the art style. I mean, and the art on the cover as much. I don't know, just taste-wise, I kind of dig the sort of other cover, even though the other cover is less, I don't know, this is sort of more, I don't want to say professional. I don't know. It's I feel like it's a more mature art on the cover, but I kind of like the older, it's more naive style. Would that be the word? Naive? Maybe. D20 is so easy to learn. I do really love it. So yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, you can say a lot about D20, and I don't blame you, but it is very easy to learn. And I like the 2D6 stuff. I think I'm going to go like a D6 system, then I want to just do D6. And I also think if I'm going to do D20, I want to all do D20. So if I can't figure out a way to make everything D6 in a way that I like, and that seems to fulfill all the things, then I feel like I got to go D20, just because everyone knows it. Or, I mean, look, you go D100, you can do whatever. But I don't know, D20 is kind of 5%, I think, is a pretty good granularity for things. I know D100, you can have 1%, whatever, but I feel like 5%, I'm not going to, I'm not going to, if you just get down to, hey, it's a 1 in 20 chance, that's fine for me. I don't know that at the end of the day, I need a finer grain percentage than that. And I could probably figure it out by doing some other way, like disadvantage, if I needed to get down lower than that. I'm not sure what that would make it, but Lincoln says they would build a game around 3D6. I've thought about 3D6. Someone showed me some cool things about 3D6. I've thought about it. I have thought about it because, in your ye old D&D like system, you're rolling attributes on 3D6. So why not use 3D6 for everything? I don't know. Part of me just thinks it's a little bit more clunky, but I do think 3D6 is really nice. And you get more of I think you get a true bell curve with 3D6, where I know the more technical mathematicians out there will say that 2D6 is not a real bell curve. So yeah, there is some nice stuff 3D6. For some reason, it strikes me as just a little bit less just neat or simple than 2D6, just because you're adding that extra 6. But yeah, I totally agree. Have I ever looked into Old School Traveler? I have. In fact, I have, and even though I've never played it, I got a hold of an Old School Traveler box set, which I will show off at some point. The box, there's a real box of rules, nothing special. And what I want to do, which is part of one of my things on my list of sort of heartbreakery things to do, is to make a character generation system for a BX or BX-like game that uses the Traveler-like character building, where you could potentially die before your character's even made and you roll through all that stuff. I really like that. And I want to adapt that to BX. It's been on my mind to do, and I've stopped doing it for a while. But yeah, it's on my list. I do, and I want to play it. It's on my list of these games I would like to play before I depart this mortal coil. I would like to play Traveler, Old School Traveler. Seems really cool. Let's see. What else have we got here? I'm heading up towards 2 hours. There is an SRD and a fantasy system, really, for Traveler. That's cool. I'll have to figure. I mean, I would play sci-fi. I'd probably just play sci-fi Traveler. I mean, I'll look at fantasy Traveler too. I mean, as far as playing it, I just want to play classic Traveler. I like sci-fi games. It's not sci-fi. I mean, fantasy, as far as role-playing games, is my favorite. But I played in a sci-fi game for a long time. I really dig sci-fi games. I had first or second edition of Shadowrun back in the day that I was really enamored with. The being able to mix the fantasy and the sci-fi stuff was always my dream to do with something like GURPS, because you could just I felt like you could play the whole thing. I don't know if it ever worked because I never really played much of GURPS, though I had the system and I read it cover to cover about 1.5 billion times back in the day, but I don't know if it would have worked for running from like cavemen to spacemen. But I really liked it. Tank Pal says they would love to run it. Yeah, I would love to. I would play it, run it, Traveler. If someone's got a Traveler game. My other problem is scheduling, and people have invited me, been sweet enough, nice enough to say, "Hey, come play in our game." And my scheduling is just so all over the place that I end up just not even getting into it. Like I just say, like, man, I'd love to, but because you can get in the weeds of saying, "Oh yeah, I'll play," and then you start trying to figure out the days, and nothing seems to work. I feel like I'm lucky that I most weeks can get my home game in with minimal changes. I feel like trying to add a second game to it, but man, if I could get into like another one shot, someone's running a one shot, and maybe do it online. I mean, that's where I would think. I would play in somebody's home game for sure. I would love to do it online too, if only just to have some content maybe that I could put somewhere or point to, just to kind of broaden my portfolio a bit. But yeah, I would love to play it. But I still have such a hard time scheduling. Let's see. Tank Pal says my first system was Star Wars D6 and then lots of Shadowrun. I have Star Wars D6 also, the West End games. I got that a little while ago. Another one I'd love to play in and run, but I've never actually played. I've read the rules. It looks really good. I like it. And people talk very fondly of that system. The newer Star Wars one, are they still making it? I forget who made it. Was that Final no, I want to say Final Fantasy. Was it I don't remember who. Anyway, the newer one with the special dice seemed a little bit too complicated for me. I felt like the D6 was just such a nice, simple way. I know there were some issues with, I think people said that Jedi or something were kind of overpowered. Probably fixable. CT works great for one shots. What's CT? What did I miss? Tell me what CT is. Oh, Classic Traveler. Okay, cool. I'd love to run on one shots of it online. Yeah. Fantasy Flight. Thank you. I had stuck with Final Fantasy. I knew fantasy was in there somewhere. Why? Like it says, why shouldn't Jedi be overpowered? Yeah. I mean, I guess, right. I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, from a narrative sense, yeah, why not? I suppose in a game you're playing where someone's playing a smuggler, someone else is playing a droid, and then someone's playing the Jedi. If the Jedi is too strong, I mean, you get into those weird things like, well, why does the Jedi need to be with anybody else if they can just, slaughter everything or solve everything on their own? But yeah, I mean, some things, as my cat is knocking stuff over on the bed. Thanks, Bruce. Some tropes work best when they're a little bit overpowered, as long as there's kind of a price attached to it, which I feel like is not that it worked very well, but I think I kind of like that concept of the Paladin, that they were overpowered, but they had a price kind of attached. And I know the price, I think there are ways to play Paladin a lot more nuanced than a lot of people did, doing the whole chaotic stupid or no, lawful stupid, thing. But I think part of it too was that's the price for all that power, is you had all that responsibility and you had to work within it. I mean, I think people just went overboard and just became this self-repeating meme. They or I don't even know, because it definitely wouldn't have been called meme back in the day, but just this problem, it just became a vicious circle. But I get what they were maybe trying. I don't even know if they were trying to do it, but I kind of get what they were trying to do, even though it didn't work. Linkian says, here's the thing, Jedi are overpowered and awesome, but who swoops in and pulls the Jedi out of the fire in the middle of the Death Star run? The scoundrel. Right. You're right. You just, as a GM though, right, you got to figure out how to get to those moments in that kind of game, or at least those moments need to be possible in that sort of game. But the thing is too, right, is you got to keep in mind, if you're playing the Death Star run as a game, if you think about that game session. Okay, tonight's game session, we're in Star Wars, and this episode is taking on the Death Star, right? This is the culmination of the game. At the beginning of the game, and for the first 2/3 of that game, The only person who's playing is the Jedi, because the smuggler has, you know, what are they doing? They can't do the Death Star run. You know, okay, maybe ideally you haven't Han Solo, the character, the player playing his character, hasn't decided to fly off into the ether, into the asteroid field to go pay Jabba. They've decided to stay, right? But you got to give them something. But the person who's at the crux of the action is just the Jedi, and everyone's in support mode. And you got to figure out ways to make that a little bit different. You can obviously put more TIE fighters out there so that the smuggler's something to do. The droid has to have something to do, right? But it's much easier in those kind of native things when it's just the Jedi. You can say, oh yeah, and then he's just going to show up at the last minute and save you. But in a game session, that might not be fun when you have to wait till the third hour to make your mark. Linkian says, you need to be conscious of the spotlight and make sure everyone gets a shine sometimes. Right. Now, the thing is, when everyone's more or less the same, like in my game, I don't need to worry about the spotlight, because they naturally, no one is powerful enough to really take it the whole time. But if you have a situation where something gets too strong, more relative to everybody else, then that's when you have to start moving that spotlight around, or when they're too specialized. Because I think when saying something 5th edition, it's not like some things are really overpowered than other things, but they just have such niches that you get into a certain situation and there's no reason for anyone else other than, say, the rogue, or maybe the rogue-like bard, or the rogue-like whatever, the rogue-like characters. I know different classes can kind of take on different archetypes, for that character to be doing something. And that's where you got to wear the spotlight. The less that specialization there is, I think, the more that the spotlight will naturally flow just as people are doing stuff, because everybody can do it. If everybody can kind of sneak around about the same, then they're all going to be sneaking. If only one person can sneak, then that spotlight's going to move over to the thief, and then it's going to move back and, you know, over and back, right? And like the thief, it's kind of natural because you can't sneak through the entire dungeon and do everything. So you're going to get more kind of natural swinginess. But if it's a Jedi or wizard or somebody who can kind of do everything, then you as a GM have to start pulling that spotlight around. So you just got to be aware of it. Jack Smith, Porkins rolls a natural 1. Yes, he definitely rolled. He rolled a natural 1. Yes, he did. And the poor guy's name was Porkins. That's just, how about some turd icing on your turd cake is your name is Porkins. Tank Pal says, kind of the same problem with hacking, decking, and Shadowrun. Absolutely. That was the whole thing, right? Is you would get these, oh, cool, we're going to send in the decker. Then everybody takes a nap while the decker gets to do everything for however much time. And then GM has to be responsible for pulling away from the decker and pulling back. And I think that's why they changed it, right? If I'm aware now, right? They changed the kind of way they did decking to kind of get rid of that waiting for the decker to deck kind of thing. Do I use the skill system in my game? No. I mean, I have, okay, so maybe yes and no, kind of in the BX style. Some of the classes have some, I would call them maybe extraordinary abilities that they can do that use that cleric turning table style. Actually, my whole 2d6 system is basically based on the cleric turning table, so they all kind of use that. But more generally, like I don't have a move in shadows. There aren't really skills in that way. Right now, I'm just using roll under attribute. I think if I could do it again, and if I did a version 2, I would do something, borrow some of the things I've been talking about that I really enjoyed from like Barbarians in Lemuria or from the 2nd edition traits, and kind of pull in some of that world building stuff with the classes to take the generic classes and make sort of more specific versions that have, I don't know if you want to call them descriptors, tags, whatever, or just kind of ultimately give them some flavor so that a player could play a Viking, for example, that is a fighter, but that Viking has some built-in concepts that they could use in a way that they use their attributes now. Because I like the idea of this thing scaling with their level, and I like the fact that if they scale with their level to something like that, it's independent from their attributes. It's really more skill-based about what they know and how to use things than just about like, well, I'm naturally clumsy kind of thing. But for now, we're just using roll under attribute, which works fairly well. It definitely favors them leaning into the things that they're good at, which kind of mimics the fact that they are strong or fast or have great memories. So it's worked okay for me. But I would probably, my next version, I'll probably do things a little bit differently. Lincoln says, poor Porkins. Yeah, absolutely, man. Pour a little out for Porkins. He deserved better. Tank Palace is going to use some version of the Lamentations of Flame Prince's D6 skill system. Yeah, I really like the Specialist and Lamentations. I like it a lot. The D6 system is fine, but again, I think that if I was going to start it over now, and especially if I'm going to be new players, I would want to use a D20 type. I would convert that D6 to D20 somehow. And it probably wouldn't be that hard. You're going from, segments of 16.666% to 5%. So maybe the first one, it would be, say, 3 out of 20, and then it would be 3 out of 20. I don't know. You have to figure it out, but 3 out of 20, then be 6 or 7 out of 20. Then I don't know. My brain, it is mush. But anyway, I would convert it. If I was going to start from scratch, I would convert it to D20. But the system itself is good. I like the Specialist idea a lot. Lamentations had a lot of good ideas in it. I just wish that other things around it were less controversial. Tank Pal says they've used Roll Under Stat for many years, branching out now since I'm working on my newest version. Yeah, I think if you're running, I think for a one shot, something really simple, Roll Under attribute works great. I think what you do is you say, look, you're a rogue, you're climbing a rope, or you're doing something rogue-ish, just let them do it, right? And then it's the other party members that then you say, okay, well, the rogue climbs the rope. Yeah, just climb. You're good. All right, the fighter wants to climb the rope. All right, roll under strength. Or the wizard, right? If the wizard is doing, I don't know, I think of wizards, I think of like literacy and reading and writing. So they want to read something in language they understand. They don't need to roll for it, but maybe the fighter who may be literate, but it's not, the menu at the tavern, roll under intelligence. See if you've got that, right? So use context, use that fictional positioning, use if they have a background, use their class to give a feel for what they know. And then when stuff is not covered by those, then roll under attribute. And if an attribute doesn't fit or it's not a good fit, then he can use percentage. You can just say, I think you got an 18% shot, so roll above 82 or 82 and up on a D100, right? So you do have that as a fallback. Let's see. Tank Pal says, I do not think it would be hard at all. Very interesting. Could just base it on D20 math. Yeah, I just use D20 math. I mean, you can convert the percentages. You can go to any dice and you can have it, any dice. If you're not familiar, go to anydice.com. It's got something that will basically spit out the odds for any particular dice you want to throw at it and all the different variations you can put in there. So you can look at the bell curve or the distribution of different die rolls, and you can see what the D6 ones are. Then you can see what the D20 ones are, and you can kind of line them up. It's not going to be exactly the same, but you can get it close, or you can figure out some other system. Whatever works. But anydice.com is invaluable for when you want to look at the percentages, the chances, what kind of random chance you're getting. And also, I would say this too, just for rolling in general. I don't know why I'm saying this now. Remember that the more you have your players roll the dice, the more there's a chance to fail. So one thing that drives me nuts, if someone says, oh, there's a 60-foot rope. Let's say you make 3 climb checks. Why? Why is the middle 30 feet of that so much more than the first 30 feet? Like, why am I rolling 3 climbing? If I have to roll 3 climbing checks, it's basically like rolling with triple disadvantage, right? Or double disadvantage. If you think about it, if any one of those fails, either I'm going to fall down, which is what a lot of them do. Oh, you got up 40 feet and then you fell, or then you got to make a save, or maybe you'll fall. You're just inviting a larger and larger chance of failure. Let things, roll forward as much as possible. If you make the roll, so you can make it a harder roll. Hey, that's a 90-foot tall rope, and I think that's kind of tough. Then make it a little bit of a harder roll. Put a modifier on the end of it, but just let the successes ride as much as possible. So I see that a lot, and it kind of drives me a little bit nuts, because you really are just, every time you make the players roll, you're inviting them to fail more than you're inviting them to succeed. So if they roll, if make them roll less often, make the rolls more meaningful, please. I beg of you, please. Likes roll under a lot. Yeah, roll under is good, and it kind of enforces your attributes, right? If you have that's what I like to think of. I hate when people say I have an intelligence, and first I think of intelligence more as maybe your memory or your retention of stuff you've like read or learned, as opposed to like your smarts. I always tell someone, play the smart or as dumb as you want to. If you have an idea that requires you to roll under intelligence, that's going to be a natural. It's going to naturally tether you to your score, right? So you have an intelligence of 6 and you want to build an atom bomb. You're going to have to make a boatload of rolls. You're most likely not going to, you're going to miss most of those rolls trying to roll under 6 all the time. Therefore, your not so retentive, information retentive character is not going to get very far building an atom bomb, right? So it kind of helps enforce that part of it you want to, and then but at the same time, you don't have to force your player to role play a dullard because they have an 8, which isn't even that bad. But I see this, especially in 5th edition. Oh, I have an 8, so I got to play this guy like he's, I don't know, Forrest Gump. No, you don't. And not even know if Forrest Gump intelligence would be. Forrest Gump's probably smarter than all of us. I don't know, but no, you don't have to do it. And by using those, they will naturally pull in line, and they favor the players playing to their strengths, right? If you're a strong character, you want to lean on the rolls that are going to go to strength, as well you should. And that's kind of what it is. A strong person is going to lean towards their strengths. Smart, the wise person is going to lean into their wisdom. So I feel like it kind of helps even things out. Oh my gosh, I've been in here a long time. All right, I'm going to wrap it up, I think. I really dig it. Man, I had a lot of people come in even late. So I think I saw my numbers dipping a little bit of people who were in the chat, and I thought, oh, well, maybe people are starting to drop out. I know it's a work day. So I get it. And it's called a lunch hour. And I'm now past hour 2, but at some point I even got more folks in here than I had towards the start. So I really appreciate that. Any more thoughts, questions, anything before I end the stream? Thank Pal says, long time and great talking. Absolutely. Thanks. And thanks folks for chiming in. And hey, if you don't want to say anything, you just want to listen in, that is great. Just if you want to feel like talking, please always, just drop stuff in the chat. The worst that happens is that I read it and I go, no, I'm not going to say it, and I'll move along. But I haven't seen anything like that because everyone here is really cool. The spammers that hit Bandit Keep's channel when I last did the chat on his channel have not surfaced here. So we are all good in the hood. If you happen to be in here and you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. It helps me out a lot, and you'll get notified when I do things like these streams. Hey, don't forget, if you give it a thumbs up to the channel if you don't mind. And if you thought there was stuff in there that folks would like to see, then send them a link, post it in your favorite form, send it to your enemies. Anybody's good. But yeah, have a great. Oh, wait a minute. Whoa, Linky in here. You guys ever set up sort of mods for these spammers? I have one. There is one mod I think it's called Nightbot, that is super popular, and I dropped that in everywhere. And I believe Bandits Keep had it on one of his other channels. He just hadn't put it on his Bandits Keep channel, so he has put that on too. So yeah, we shouldn't be hit with that anymore unless they figure out a way around Nightbot. But and if any of you guys, so what I'm probably going to do, because YouTube keeps bugging me about it, is I can set up channel memberships. So maybe I'll set it up. I don't know if it's easier for folks if they feel like supporting me, and I'm not trying to push people to support me if they don't want to. I'm going to start. I'm behind in my zine, and I got some other stuff that I'm working on. So hopefully I want to make stuff that if you guys like, instead of saying, hey, support me through some kind of charitable cause, I'm not a charity. But there is channel memberships. Maybe I'll make them just like 99 cents or something. And then if folks want to, I think I can set up like super or moderators. If any of you guys want to, anyone want to volunteer to be mods or do anything like that, I don't feel like I really not necessarily have a need for it, but it might be helpful if folks want to, just to take the, if something does come up. So that was part of what happened with the with Bandits Keep with Daniel. People were spamming, and he's trying. He's got me over here. He's got the chat over there. He's trying to manage the stream, and like stuff's happening, and couldn't it was just hard to figure it out at once. And having a couple of people who or maybe one or two folks who want to step in and be mods, just in case something like that happens, reach out to me. Let me know if you want to. I don't want to push anyone into doing it. I don't want to foist responsibility on anybody, but maybe at some point I'll get big enough or it might be useful. So think about it. And if anyone wants to mod, let me know. I'll think about the channel memberships. There's like a couple of things I need to do. So I need to figure out, okay, so like the YouTube, the way they have things structured, I'm still getting used to it. So now some of these options have opened up to me, but I got to figure out what to do with them all, or just how to do them. And that, like, there's channel memberships, and then I got to like get graphics for things. I don't know if people want party hats or I don't even really know what it is. I gotta look at it. I gotta figure it out. Like I said, I'll figure that part out. And I have the newsletter, which I'm behind releasing. So I got to work on that this week. Also, I've got, Patreon, I've got coffee. So I feel like people who will support me in different ways, it's all kind of thrown out there. And one of the things that's nice about Patreon and coffee to a little bit lesser extent, is that like I can upload a file, or I can say, here's a PDF of something I made, and I can put it up on Patreon, and Patreon supporters can download it. Great. I think coffee has something similar. I can put this up there and you can support me and download. That's great. I don't know for the YouTube channel memberships, if just all the perks have to revolve around stuff on YouTube, or whether I have something I want to give you, like here's this thing I made, you can take it. And that's why I've been a little bit hesitant, because is it fracturing the community more amongst these different things? And then if you're on Patreon and I want to send you a nice PDF of something that I made, but I can't because you're on YouTube and I don't have your email and YouTube, whatever. So I'll probably set it up, but there might be I might need to figure out some things there. But I will do it. But yeah, let me know if you're someone who hangs around here a lot, and you think like, hey, I could be a mod in a pinch, and you're not a crazy person who's going to become the Caesar of mods and crazy dictator. Maybe reach out to me and I'll make you a mod, and we could see how that works, and maybe get some needed bureaucracy in place, because right now, it's too transparent. I need some levels of protection, so I'm not overexposed as the kingpin that I am. Anyhow, all right, I've been on 2 hours and 17. Is this a record for streams? I don't think so, because I think Daniel and I have gone long. This might be my record for going by myself. I'm not playing a game. No crushing and listening to Lamentations. You're out. Yeah. Yeah. Send the chatters fleeing before you and listen to the lamentations of their partners. It's not just women who can lament these days. Conan was out of touch. Men can lament just as well. All right, everybody. I'm signing off. Thanks again, everybody who's in here. Thanks again for all the folks. You guys are an awesome people. I'm so glad that you found me and that I found you and that we found each other. I feel like I was about to break into an 80s love song, so it's definitely time for me to head out. Game on, everybody. I'll talk to you later.